Welcome to Mia Horror Stories. To make it easier on your eyes, this video plays against a black screen, so you can close your eyes, get comfortable, and let the story take over. But don't relax too much, the ending might just catch you off guard. Stay with me until the very last word. The stainless steel bowl in Kennel 14 was empty, except for 3 strands of coarse black hair stuck to the grease at the bottom. That was the first thing. The second thing was that I had filled it 20 minutes earlier. I stood outside the kennel with the food cart pressed against my hip, listening to the building settle around me. The ventilation system clicked behind the ceiling tiles. Somewhere in the cat room, a metal litter scoop scraped plastic. Dogs barked in uneven bursts from the intake wing, each one setting off another, until the noise rolled down the corridor and broke apart against the cinder block walls. Kennel 14 stayed quiet. It was supposed to. There was no animal inside. My name is Mara Ellis, a 29-year-old woman, and at the time I worked the closing shift at the Franklin County Animal Care and Adoption Center in Columbus, Ohio. The shelter sat just south of downtown, not far from the Scioto River and the low industrial blocks along Frank Road. It was the kind of building most people drove past without noticing. Beige brick, narrow windows, a fenced exercise yard, and a sign out front with a cartoon dog that looked happier than any dog arriving through intake ever did. I had been working there for 3 years, long enough to know that food vanished for ordinary reasons. A dog could hook a paw through the gate and drag a bowl closer. A kennel latch could look shut without catching. Mice sometimes got into the dry storage room, although they usually preferred torn bags to prepared bowls. Employees made mistakes. Volunteers made more. On bad days, everybody blamed everybody else. So I did not panic. I unlocked the kennel and pulled the door open. The hinges gave their usual 2-note squeal. "Come on," I said quietly. Nothing moved inside. Kennel 14 was a standard concrete run, about 4 feet wide and 8 feet deep, with a raised plastic bed, a drain in the floor, and a guillotine-style divider at the back leading to the outside portion. The overhead fluorescent light was going bad. It flickered every few seconds, not enough to go dark, just enough to make the room seem to tighten and release. The bed was bare. The drain cover was in place. The outside hatch was shut. I crouched and touched the floor near the bowl. Dry. No spilled water, no paw marks, no bits of kibble. The hairs in the bowl were thick and wiry. They looked like they had come from a German shepherd or some kind of shepherd mix. Kennel 14's last occupant had been a white pit bull named Darren. Darren had gone to foster care 4 days earlier. I heard wheels squeaking behind me. "Please tell me you're not feeding ghosts now." I turned. Eli Navarro, a 34-year-old man, came down the corridor, pushing a laundry bin loaded with folded blankets. Eli was one of the shelter's senior animal care technicians. He had the shoulders of somebody who had spent years lifting frightened dogs into vans, and the tired, gentle voice of a late-night radio host. He wore blue nitrile gloves tucked into one back pocket, fading scratch across his left cheek from a husky that had panicked during a restraint the week before. He stopped beside me and looked into kennel 14. What happened? I fed it. The kennel. I put a bowl down by accident. Okay, and now the food is gone. He considered that. You sure you fed it? Yes, you've been here since noon. I know how long I've been here. That wasn't an accusation. It sounded like one. Eli leaned over the bowl. Whose hair? That's what I'm wondering. He picked up one of the strands between two gloved fingers. Black shepherd, maybe. Nothing black has been housed in this run all week. Could have been stuck to the cart. The bowl was clean when I filled it. You inspect every bowl before feeding. I rinse them. That's not what I asked. I stared at him. He smiled slightly. I'm helping. My everyday reason for taking the closing shifts was money. Closing came with an hourly differential, and I was trying to save enough to move out of the apartment I still shared with my ex-boyfriend's cousin, a woman who spent most nights watching true crime shows at a volume that made the floor vibrate. The private reason was harder to explain. I liked the shelter after the public left. During adoption hours, people lied constantly. They lied about landlords, children, fenced yards, previous pets, why they were surrendering an animal, whether a dog had bitten, whether a cat had been outside, whether their new puppy had just stopped eating, or had actually been vomiting for 3 days. At night, the lies went home. The animals were still scared and unpredictable, but at least their fear was honest. My own flaw was that I trusted routine more than I trusted people. When something slipped outside the routine, I did not handle it well. Checked locks twice. I counted medications twice. I sometimes circled back after leaving work because I could not remember hearing the front door latch. Eli knew this. That was why he kept his tone casual. Maybe one of the volunteers tossed food in there, he said. There haven't been volunteers back here since 5. Could have been Renee. She left at 6. Then maybe you moved the bowl. I didn't. Maybe I moved it. You didn't. How do you know? Because you're on laundry. Very convincing. A dog slammed against a gate 3 kennels down. The metal impact cracked through the corridor. I stood too fast and struck my shoulder against the open door. Pain ran down my arm, sharp and immediate. Eli glanced at me. I'm fine. You always say that before you are. He set the hair back in the bowl and stepped inside the kennel. He checked behind the bed, lifted the rubber mat near the drain, then pulled the inside release for the outside run. The divider rose with a chain rattle. Cold evening air came through the rear gate. The outside section was empty. Beyond it, the exercise yard fence stood beneath yellow security lights. Traffic murmured from the highway. A freight train horn carried across the industrial lots, low and distant. Eli looked down. What? He pointed near the back wall. A few pieces of kibble had been pushed into the corner where the concrete met the fence. Not scattered, grouped. That could be from Darren, he said. 4 days ago. Food gets under things. There isn't anything there for it to get under. He crouched, gathering the pieces into his palm. The kibble was moist, not soaked, softened, fresh. Eli's expression changed, but only briefly. Then the staff radio clipped to his belt crackled. Animal care to intake. The voice belonged to Denise Harper, a 47-year-old woman, the evening supervisor. Denise had worked in municipal shelters since before I finished middle school and carried herself with the blunt, forward momentum of someone who had stopped expecting emergencies to arrive one at a time. She had cropped gray hair, reading glasses hanging from a cord, and a reputation for being fair, until somebody wasted her time. Eli pressed the radio button. "Go ahead. Owner surrender at the back door. Large dog, possible bite history. I need both of you." He looked at me. I looked at the damp kibble in his palm. "Copy," he said. "Coming." He lowered the divider and stepped out. "You want to lock this kennel?" It was locked. "Then lock it again." I shut the gate and pulled hard enough to make the latch snap. We headed toward intake. Behind us, Kennel 14's fluorescent light flickered once, then held steady. The surrender was a tan mastiff mix named Boomer, about 90 pounds, and trembling so hard his collar tags shook against the buckle. His owner stood in the intake bay, with both hands jammed into the pockets of a paint-stained hoodie. Rain had started outside, tapping against the metal awning over the loading area. Denise held a clipboard against her chest. "Owner says he growled at a child," she said. The owner stared at the floor. "He didn't bite. You wrote that he made contact with his mouth, but not a bite." Denise did not argue. She had learned that repeating a person's own words was usually more effective. Eli moved sideways toward Boomer rather than approaching head-on. "Hey, buddy." Boomer backed into the owner's legs. The man stepped away. That small movement told me more than the paperwork had. Boomer turned, confused by the sudden absence of pressure behind him, and his leash tightened. "Easy," I said. The dog's nails clicked rapidly on the sealed floor. For 10 minutes, ordinary work took over. We scanned for a microchip. Nothing. We photographed his teeth and a healing sore beneath his collar. We logged a bag of generic dry food, a frayed rope toy, and a bottle of expired ear medication. Denise asked questions. The owner answered selectively. When it came time to transfer the leash, Boomer flattened himself against the wall. "I can't," the man said. "You need to hand me the lead," Eli told him. "I mean, I can't stay." "You don't have to." The man looked relieved. That bothered me more than if he had cried. He let go. Boomer lunged after him as the loading door opened. The dog slipped on the wet concrete, slammed one hip against the wall, and began barking in a high, panicked rhythm that did not match his size. The owner left without turning around. I helped guide Boomer into an empty holding run while Eli used a kennel board as a visual barrier. Nobody got bitten. Boomer scraped one paw and split a nail. We cleaned it, documented it, called the on-call veterinarian, and gave him time to settle. By 8:30, the rain had thickened. Shelter sounded different in heavy weather. Water rattled in the downspouts. The roof popped as the temperature dropped. Every dog that disliked storms started pacing, nails ticking against concrete in separate nervous tempos. I was finishing Boomer's intake notes when Denise came into the office. "Why is 14 marked occupied?" I looked up. "It is." She held out the kennel tablet. On the screen, the shelter management system showed Kennel 14 highlighted in green. Occupied. Animal ID, blank. Name blank, species, canine, feeding status completed. Eli leaned over my shoulder. "That's new," he said. Denise tapped the screen. Who entered this? I didn't, I said. System logs say Mara. I took the tablet. The timestamp was 7:42 p.m. That was around the time I had found the empty bowl. It probably auto-saved when I logged the feeding round. An empty kennel shouldn't be on the round. I know. Denise exhaled through her nose. The office smelled of wet coats, printer toner, and the microwave popcorn somebody had burned earlier. Clear the occupancy, she said. Then finish closing checks. I tapped the status field. The screen froze. A spinning circle appeared, turned twice, then vanished. Kennel 14 stayed green. Eli said, Network S been dropping all day. Denise took the tablet and tried again. Same result. Restart it, she said. She handed it back and moved toward the door. Denise, I said. She stopped. There was food in that kennel. There shouldn't have been. I know. I put it there accidentally. Then it was gone. She looked from me to Eli. He showed her the hairs, which he had sealed in a small evidence bag from intake supplies. He had done that without mentioning it. Denise stared at the bag. For God's sake, Eli. I figured we might want to identify it. It's dog hair in an animal shelter. Fresh food was gone from a locked kennel, I said. Denise rubbed at the bridge of her nose. A long bark rose from the isolation wing, then cut off midway through the sound. For a few seconds, only the rain remained. Check the cameras, Denise said. The shelter had 16 security cameras, but only 4 covered the kennel corridors. Kennel 14 sat at the far edge of camera 9's view, partially blocked by a structural pillar, and the corner of the food prep room. Denise logged into the security computer. The footage loaded in grainy blue-gray. At 7:19, I appeared pushing the food cart. I stopped at Kennel 14, looked down at my list, and set a full bowl inside. Watching myself make the mistake irritated me more than it should have. At least you fed it, Eli said. Denise gave him a look. She dragged the timeline forward. At 7:26, I left the corridor. Nothing happened for almost 4 minutes. Dogs shifted behind gates. One spun in circles. Another pawed at a blanket. Kennel 14 remained empty. Then the video skipped. Not glitched exactly. The timestamp jumped from 7:30:11 to 7:31:03. When the image resumed, the bowl was no longer visible. Denise leaned closer. Camera dropped. For 52 seconds, I said, "It happens." Did it happen on the other cameras? She checked. Camera 8 had continuous footage. So did camera 10. Only camera 9 had lost time. Eli folded his arms. We should inspect the outside fence. Denise looked at the rain streaking the narrow office window. It's dark. We have flashlights. We also have 2 people left on shift and 46 animals in the building. I'll go, I said. Denise's mouth tightened. My shoulders still hurt from striking the kennel door. I rotated it once, hoping nobody noticed. Eli noticed. You're not going alone. I didn't ask you. No, you just announced a bad decision confidently. Denise looked at the frozen image on the monitor. Empty corridor. Empty kennel. No bowl. Then the radio on her belt crackled. A burst of static came first. After that, we heard a sound that was difficult to place. Metal scraping concrete. Slowly, 3 pulls, then a pause. The transmission ended. Denise picked up the radio. Who keyed that? No answer. She tried again. Staff check. The building's radios were assigned by number. Denise was Unit 1. Eli was Unit 3. I was Unit 4. Unit 2 had gone home at 6. The display on Denise's radio showed the transmission had come from Unit 5. We did not have a Unit 5. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then something clanged in the kennel corridor. Not loud. A bowl touching a gate. Denise turned toward the doorway. Eli reached for the large flashlight charging beside the first aid cabinet. I looked at the security monitor. Camera 9 was still live. Kennel 14 sat at the edge of the frame, mostly hidden by the pillar, but I could see the open space in front of its gate. A stainless steel bowl rolled slowly into view. It made one uneven circle. Then it fell flat. Denise picked up the master key ring. "We can call facilities," she said. "At 9 at night," Eli asked. "We can call police." "And tell them a bowl moved," she looked at me. The choice settled between us in the cramped office. We could lock the inner doors, finish the essential animal checks, and wait for daylight. Or we could go back to Kennel 14, where the camera had lost 52 seconds, where an empty run had somehow been marked occupied, and where the bowl I had filled was now lying in the corridor. I listened to the rain hammering the loading bay roof. Then, underneath it, faint but regular, came the wet sound of something eating. Denise closed her hand around the keys. "Lights on," she said. "All 3 of us." Eli lifted the flashlight. I took the catch pole from the wall, and we stepped into the corridor. The eating stopped when we opened the office door. Not faded. Stopped. 1 second, there was that wet, repetitive sound under the rain, soft enough that I could have convinced myself it came from a dog licking an empty bowl. The next second, there was only the ventilation system and the uneven chorus from the kennel wings. Denise went first. She carried the master keys in one hand and a can of citronella animal deterrent in the other. Eli followed with the flashlight held low, its beam sliding over the floor ahead of us. I stayed behind them with the catch pole braced against my shoulder. The pole felt heavier than it had during training. It was an aluminum shaft with a looped cable at the end, designed for controlling animals that could not safely be handled by leash. Used properly, it gave distance. Used badly, it could tighten around a throat or make a frightened dog fight hard enough to injure itself. I had used one only twice, both times with somebody more experienced standing beside me. The corridor lights buzzed overhead. Kennel 12 held a brindle hound that pressed his body against the gate and watched us without barking. Kennel 13's shepherd mix paced in tight half circles, her nails clicking in a rhythm that stopped whenever Eli's flashlight crossed her face. The bowl lay outside Kennel 14. It had tipped onto its side again. Denise raised one hand, telling us to stop. "What?" Eli whispered. She pointed. A dark smear ran from the kennel gate across the concrete. It was only 8 or 9 inches long, narrow and shiny beneath the fluorescent light. Eli crouched without touching it. "Blood. It doesn't look red," I said. "It's wet." He angled the flashlight. The smear was brown with a green edge. "Food," Denise said. "Canned food." "We didn't serve canned tonight," I said. "Medical did." "Not in this wing." Denise stepped around the smear and examined the latch. The gate was closed, but the safety clip that should have secured the lever hung loose. I knew I had fastened it. I remembered the resistance of the clip between my thumb and forefinger. I remembered pulling the gate hard enough to hear the latch strike. My brain supplied the memory too quickly, with the suspicious neatness of a story rehearsed after the fact. "Don't," Eli said quietly. I looked at him. "Don't start blaming yourself yet." "I'm not. You're doing the face." "What face?" "The face where you reconstruct the last hour until every mistake becomes yours." Denise glanced back. "Both of you stop." She fitted the master key into the padlock beneath the latch. The light above kennel 14 flickered. Once, twice. Then every light in the corridor went out. The dogs erupted. Barking struck us from both sides, close and physical. Metal gates rattled. A dog threw itself against a door hard enough that the catch pole jumped in my hands. Eli's flashlight snapped upward. "Stay where you are." Emergency lights should have come on immediately. They did not. The only illumination came from Eli's flashlight and the dim yellow security lights filtering through the rear runs. The beam moved across Denise's face, bleaching her skin and throwing the sockets of her glasses into shadow. She lifted her radio. "Office, this is 1. Power loss in the main kennel." Static answered. Then a chirp. The radio's battery symbol flashed red. "That was charged," she said. Eli checked his own. "Mine too." His screen went black. My radio was clipped to my belt. I pressed the side button. "Nothing." "Generator," I said. "It should have transferred by now," Denise replied. Somewhere deeper in the building, an alarm began to pulse. Not the fire alarm. A slower tone. 3 beeps, a pause, then 3 more. Denise swore. "What is that?" Eli asked. "Ventilation failure." The shelter's main kennel ventilation system was designed to keep air moving through a building full of urine, disinfectant, wet fur, airborne disease, and industrial cleaning chemicals. It also regulated temperature. In October, a short outage was uncomfortable. Not deadly, except the isolation wing had 2 dogs with respiratory symptoms. The cat room relied on separate negative pressure fans, and the cleaning crew had used chlorine disinfectant in the drains less than an hour earlier. "Why would ventilation drop with the generator?" I asked. "It shouldn't." The beeping continued. Dogs barked over it until individual sounds disappeared into one harsh sheet of noise. Denise moved toward the office. "We need to check the electrical panel and call facilities." "What about 14?" I asked. "It can wait." A heavy impact sounded from the intake wing. Then another boomer. Eli turned immediately. "He's going to hurt himself." "Check him," Denise said. "Mara, with me." "I should go with Eli." "No, I need somebody who knows the closing systems." That was true. I had been closing alone twice a week for almost a year. I knew where the emergency shutoffs were, which doors failed to catch in damp weather, which freezer outlet shared a breaker with the staff refrigerator, even though it was not supposed to. Routine. My safe thing. Except now the lights were out, the radios were dead, and something had changed the routine faster than I could account for it. Eli pointed his flashlight at my chest. "Take this. What will you use?" "My phone. No signal in intake. I don't need signal to see." Denise accepted the flashlight from him and gave it to me. Eli disappeared toward Boomer's Run, using his phone screen for light. Denise and I headed for the utility room. The corridor changed in darkness. Distances shortened. Every gate seemed closer to my elbows. The dogs reacted differently without the fluorescent lights. Some barked harder. Others went still. As we passed Kennel 7, a black Labrador lifted his nose toward the ceiling and whined. At Kennel 5, a terrier scratched frantically at the rear divider. "Why are they doing that?" I asked. "Storm. They've been in storms before." Denise kept moving. The utility room was beside laundry, behind a gray fire-rated door that was supposed to stay locked. Denise reached for the key, then stopped. The door stood open by half an inch. Warm air breathed through the gap. "Did maintenance come today?" I asked. "No." "Pest control, Tuesday." She pushed the door open with the toe of her shoe. The smell hit first. Hot dust, damp concrete, something chemical sharp enough to sting the back of my throat. I swept the flashlight beam across the room. Shelving lined one wall, stacked with filters, mop heads, spare hoses, and boxes of disposable shoe covers. The electrical panels were mounted opposite. A red generator control box sat between them. One cabinet door hung open. The concrete floor beneath it was wet. Denise stepped inside. "Don't touch the water." "I know." The leak came from a copper pipe near the ceiling. A thin stream ran down the wall and across the floor toward the electrical panels. "Roof leak," I said. "That's not roof plumbing." The ventilation alarm continued beyond the door, muted but steady. Denise moved closer to the generator box, staying on the dry strip near the shelving. The display was blank. She pressed the test button. Nothing happened. "Breaker?" I asked. "Main panel first." The breakers looked normal from where we stood. None had visibly tripped. Then I noticed the smell beneath the chemical odor. Gasoline. The generator ran on natural gas, not gasoline. "Denise." She turned. I aimed the flashlight toward the shelving. A red plastic fuel can sat behind a box of filters. Its cap was off. A thin, wet line led from the can to the open cabinet. Denise stared at it. "That isn't ours." The alarm beeped 3 times, paused, beeped again. "Back out," she said. We retreated into the corridor. She closed the fire door without latching it. "What does gasoline do in there?" I asked. "It makes us not touch anything. Should we evacuate?" "Not automatically. We need to know whether it spilled near an ignition source. The power just failed. That doesn't mean the building's safe to empty into a storm with no transport." The shelter had 46 animals, several requiring 2-person handling. Evacuation crates were stored in the rear warehouse. The county's emergency animal transport trailer was kept at another facility nearly 20 minutes away. Assuming anyone answered, Denise pulled out her personal phone. No service. We both knew the building had dead spots, but the office landline should still have worked if the external line had power. Then the alarm tone changed. The ventilation warning stopped. A high, continuous tone replaced it. Denise's expression sharpened. "What now?" "Freezer temperature." The shelter stored vaccines, cert medications, and deceased animals in separate refrigeration units. The medical refrigerator had battery monitoring. The body freezer did not. A power outage of several minutes would not ruin anything. But the alarm meant the medical refrigerator had already climbed above its safe range, which did not make sense unless it had been warm before the lights failed. "We need the office phone," Denise said. We moved faster. Halfway there, Eli appeared at the far end of the corridor. His phone light bounced as he ran. "Boomer's out." Denise stopped. "Out of the run. The interior latch is bent. He hit it until it popped." "Where is he?" "Intake hall. Door to the lobby is closed. Loading bay door is closed. He's contained." "Is he injured?" "Bleeding from the mouth. Maybe a broken tooth. He won't let me approach." "Can you secure him with the kennel board?" "Not alone." A bang sounded from intake. Then the scrape of claws. Boomer barked once, deep and explosive. My injured shoulder tightened instinctively. Denise looked between the utility room and the intake wing. We had an unknown fuel spill near electrical equipment, failed ventilation, failing refrigeration, no radio contact, and a frightened 90-pound dog loose in a confined hallway. The problem had become a stack of problems, each one making the others harder. "We call 911 first," Denise said. "Then facilities. Then animal control backup." "The office line may be down," I said. "Check it." "What about Boomer?" "Eli and I hold him in intake." Eli shook his head. "You need to see the latch. Later." "No, it wasn't forced outward." Denise stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It's bent inward." For a moment, nobody spoke. Rain rattled against the outer rungs. A dog coughed in isolation. Denise said, "Show me." We went to intake together. The hallway there was narrower than the kennel corridor, with painted drywall instead of block and framed adoption photographs along one side. Eli's phone light caught the pictures at odd angles. Smiling families, children holding leashes, dogs wearing holiday bandanas. Boomer stood at the far end near the loading bay door. His body was rigid. Blood and saliva hung in strings from his lower lip. One front paw was lifted, the split nail bothering him. His pupils reflected white in the light. He was not looking at us. He was staring at the closed door to the examination room. "Boomer," Eli said softly. The dog's ears flicked, but his eyes stayed fixed. Denise kept her voice low. "Where's the damaged run?" Behind us. We turned. The holding run door stood open. The latch plate was twisted toward the inside of the run, not toward the hallway. The screws had pulled partly from the frame. That did not mean somebody had opened it. Boomer could have struck the door at an angle. It failed in strange ways under repeated force. Still, it looked wrong. "What made him start hitting it?" I asked. "Lights went out," Eli said. Then something knocked on the exam room wall. Denise looked at the exam room door, knocked 3 times, the same number as the scraping over the radio. I tightened my grip on the catch pole. Boomer growled, not at us, at the exam room. The door had a narrow, wired glass window. Darkness filled the other side. Denise whispered, "Was anyone in there?" "No." "Was it checked after the owner surrender?" "I cleaned the table myself." Another sound came from inside. A soft metallic click. The handle lowered. Boomer lunged. He hit the end of the intake hall before we had time to move. His paws slipped, his shoulder struck the wall, and the framed photographs jumped on their hooks. The exam room door opened 2 inches. "Back," Eli shouted. I lifted the catch pole. Denise grabbed the handle from our side and yanked the door shut. Something resisted for half a second, then released. She pulled until the latch caught. Boomer barked and snapped at the door seam. "Office," Denise said. Now, we backed away without turning our backs on the dog. The office landline had no dial tone. Denise unplugged it, reseated the cord, tried again. Nothing. My phone showed no service. Eli had one bar near the window, but every call failed before connecting. "Internet?" I asked. Denise checked the computer. The security system still displayed local camera feeds, but the network icon showed disconnected. Could the storm knock out power, phones, cell service, and internet? Eli asked. "Yes," Denise said, "all at once." Yes, her answer came too fast. I looked at camera 9. The kennel corridor was darker now, lit only by the rear security lamps. Kennel 14's gate was visible at the edge of the frame. "Open. Denise." She followed my gaze. The gate swung inward by a few inches. Nobody had opened it. Or more accurately, none of us had. A shape crossed the far end of camera 8. Human height, gone before I could focus. "Go back," Eli said. Denise dragged the recording bar backward. Camera 8 showed the laundry corridor. At 9:07:14, something passed between the camera and the utility room door. Dark clothing. One arm. Maybe a person. The image caught no face. "We're not alone," I said. Denise picked up the master keys. "How many exits?" "Front lobby, loading bay, staff entrance, exercise yard," Eli said. "All alarmed," I replied. "Not with power down," Denise said. A crash came from the rear warehouse. Metal shelving from the sound of it. Then dogs began barking from that direction, a wave moving kennel by kennel toward us. Denise opened a desk drawer and removed a second can of animal deterrent. "We secure Boomer, get to the staff entrance, and make an outside call." "The staff entrance is beside the warehouse," I said. "We go another way." "There isn't another way unless we cross the exterior runs." The rear runs were narrow, wet, and separated by guillotine doors. Moving through them meant opening occupied kennels one at a time or climbing the 6-foot exercise yard fence. "We could use the loading bay," Eli said. "Boomer's blocking it." "I can move him." "With what?" "The catch pole." Both of them looked at me. My shoulder throbbed beneath my uniform. I had the pole. I had the most recent restraint training. And I was the person in the room most likely to freeze when a familiar process stopped behaving predictably. "No," I said. It came out too quickly. Eli's voice softened. "Mara, I can't control him one-handed if he spins. You won't be alone. He's bleeding. He's panicked. If the loop catches wrong, we don't have time," Denise said. On the security monitor, camera 8 flickered. The warehouse door moved. It opened slowly into the corridor. A person stepped out wearing a dark rain jacket and one of our disposable white shoe covers over each foot. The hood hid the face. They carried something long in one hand. At first, I thought it was a broom handle. Then the object caught the security light, a bolt cutter. The person looked directly toward the camera. The feed went black. At the same moment, every kennel latch in the main corridor began to rattle, not all at once, one after another, starting at kennel 14, moving toward the office. Denise locked the office door. The handle turned almost immediately from the other side, and Boomer, still loose in intake, began screaming. The office door shook once, then again. Not a hard impact, just pressure on the handle, testing whether the lock had caught. Denise raised one finger to her lips. Boomer kept screaming in the intake hall, a raw, high sound dragged out of a dog too large to make it. Each cry ended in a choke as he hit the end of the corridor and lost his footing. Eli moved toward the security monitor. Camera 8 was black. Camera 9 showed the kennel corridor in emergency light shadow. Kennel 14's gate stood open. Beyond it, the occupied runs formed a straight line toward the office, their steel doors flashing whenever an animal moved. The rattling had stopped. The silence afterward was worse, because it gave shape to everything else. Rain in the gutters, dogs panting, the freezer alarm, the little electric tick from the monitor. The office handle turned again. Denise pointed to the second door. The office had 2 exits. The main one opened into the kennel corridor. The other opened into a narrow records room, which connected to the adoption lobby through a short passage. The lobby led to the front entrance, but the public doors were magnetically locked after hours and required power to release cleanly. There was also an emergency crash bar. In theory, the city had postponed replacing it twice. Eli whispered, "Front door." Denise nodded. We moved into the records room one at a time. I went first with the catch pole. The room was barely wider than the filing cabinets lining both walls. Old surrender forms and bite reports filled cardboard boxes stacked shoulder high. My flashlight passed over handwritten labels: 2022 hold requests, court seizures, deceased intake. The smell of paper and dust almost covered the shelter odors. Almost. Behind us, the office door gave a sharp metallic click. Someone had inserted something into the lock. Denise pulled the records room door shut. "No key," she whispered. "It locks only from the office side." "So they can follow us," I said, "if they get in." Eli pressed his ear to the door, a scrape, then a soft snap. He looked at Denise. "Bolt cutters. Not on that lock." The doorknob moved. We did not wait. The passage opened into the adoption lobby, a bright, cheerful space during daytime hours. At night, without power, it looked like a furniture showroom after closing. Plastic chairs lined one wall. A display of donor plaques reflected the flashlight. Paper paw prints, each bearing the name of a contributor, covered the glass beside the reception desk. The front entrance was 30 feet away. We moved quickly but quietly. Boomer's screaming faded behind the walls, replaced by lower, frantic barking. The reception desk phone was dead. Eli checked the front doors. The inner glass door opened. The outer one did not. He leaned on the crash bar. "Nothing." "Again," Denise said. He threw his weight into it. The bar shifted a fraction, then stopped. "Top latch is stuck," he said. "Can you force it with leverage?" I handed him the catch pole. He wedged the aluminum shaft between the crash bar and the frame. "Don't bend it," Denise whispered. Eli gave her a look. "I'm trying not to die politely." He pushed. The pole flexed. The crash bar moved farther this time, enough to make the top latch clunk inside the frame. Rain blurred the parking lot beyond the glass. The nearest road was visible past the fence, reflecting the security lights in broken orange streaks. 20 feet outside. That was all. Eli shifted his grip. On 3, Denise braced one hand against the door. I took the lower part of the pole. 1, he said. The lobby lights flashed on. All of them. The sudden brightness hit so hard I shut my eyes. An alarm shrieked overhead. Not the freezer, not ventilation. The building intrusion alarm. Dogs answered from every wing. Move, Denise shouted. We heaved. The door opened 6 inches. Cold rain blew through the gap. Then something struck the glass from outside. A human shape. I let go and stumbled backward. Eli lost his leverage. The door slammed. A face pressed against the pane. Pale skin. Open mouth. Wet hair plastered to the forehead. I swung the flashlight up, though the lights were already on. The face slid sideways across the glass, then dropped out of sight. For half a second, none of us moved. Eli recovered first. He went to the window, keeping clear of the door. A woman lay on the sidewalk outside. Denise stared. Oh, Jesus. The woman rolled onto her back and lifted one arm weakly. Her clothes were soaked. She wore green medical scrubs under a black jacket. I recognized her. Rachel. Rachel Kim, a 31-year-old woman, worked as a veterinary technician on the day shift. She was not scheduled that evening. She had a habit of leaving coffee cups in the treatment room and apologizing to animals before giving injections. She slapped one palm against the glass. Eli leaned close. Her mouth formed words. We could not hear through the storm and the alarm. Denise pointed toward the staff entrance side of the building and shouted, "Go around." Rachel shook her head violently, then pointed behind her. A dark figure moved near the edge of the parking lot. Eli stepped away from the glass. "Kill the lights." "How?" I asked. The building had restored only partial power. Lobby lights burned. The rest of the shelter remained black on the security screens. Rachel got to her knees. She struck the glass again and held up her phone. The flashlight on it blinked 3 times, stopped. Blinking started again. "She called someone," I said. "She's warning us," Denise replied. The figure in the parking lot disappeared behind a county transport van. Rachel saw it too. She crawled toward the door. Eli shoved the catch pole into the crash bar again. "We get her inside." "No," Denise said. He turned. "She's outside in the rain with someone stalking her. If we open this, we may let them both in. She already works here. We don't know why she's here." Rachel struck the glass harder. Her left sleeve had gone dark from elbow to wrist. Blood. That settled it. Eli pushed the pole down. The latch released. Denise opened the door only wide enough for Rachel to fall through. I grabbed her jacket and pulled. Eli slammed the door again. The top latch caught this time. Rachel hit the lobby floor on both knees, gasping. Up close, the injury was clearer. A long cut ran along the outside of her forearm, not deep enough to expose tendon, but wide and ugly, with rain diluting the blood over her hand. "What happened?" Denise asked. Rachel tried to answer, but could not get enough air. I knelt beside her. "Slow, breathe." She looked at me as though she had not expected to see any of us. "He took my keys." "Who?" "The man by the van. Did you see his face?" "No, Hood." "Why are you here?" She stared at Denise. "You called me." Denise's expression changed. I did not. Rachel pulled her phone from her pocket. The screen was cracked but working. She opened the call log. At 8:41 p.m., she had received a call from the shelter's main number. Duration, 23 seconds. What did the caller say? Eli asked. They said Boomer had crashed during intake, said you needed help with sedation. Man or woman, voice was distorted, like speakerphone from far away. Why didn't you call back? I did. She showed us 3 failed calls. Then I drove over. The staff lot gate was open. The front door wouldn't release. Somebody hit my car window. With what? No, a bar, something metal. I got out on the passenger side and ran. The lobby alarm continued to scream. Denise found the keypad under the reception desk and entered her code. Invalid. She tried again. Invalid. Code changed, she said. Can someone do that locally? I asked. With administrator access. Who has administrator access? Me, the director, county IT. A shadow passed across the front glass. We all turned. Nothing remained outside except rain and the county van. Rachel whispered, he was right there. Eli crouched beside her and wrapped her forearm with gauze from the reception first aid kit. The lights flickered, then died again. The alarm stopped with them. In the renewed darkness, we heard something strike the outer door. Once, twice, then scrape down the glass. We retreated into the records passage. The first attempt to escape had failed. It had also given us Rachel, another injured person, and confirmation that someone had used the shelter's phone system to lure staff back into the building before communications went down. We could no longer treat this as random vandalism. Someone had planned it. Denise led us through the records room toward the office, but stopped before opening the door. What? Eli whispered. She pointed at the floor. A narrow line of light showed beneath the door. The office emergency lamp had come on. Pair of shadows interrupted it. Feet. Someone stood on the other side. We backed away. Rachel leaned into me. Her teeth chattered from cold or shock. We need another route, she whispered. The adoption lobby connected to the cat wing through a public viewing hallway. From there, a staff-only door opened into medical. Medical connected to isolation, and isolation led to the rear exterior runs. It was the long way around the building, but it kept us away from the main kennel corridor and the warehouse. We went through the lobby again, staying below the windows. At the cat wing door, Denise used the master key. It opened. The smell changed immediately. Less disinfectant, more litter, warm plastic, and the dry sweetness of kibble. Emergency strips along the floor glowed faint green from battery power. Cats watched us from stacked enclosures. Most had flattened themselves into blankets or litter boxes. One orange tabby hissed at the beam. The hallway ran 60 feet to medical. Public viewing windows lined the right side. Cat condos lined the left. Halfway down, a carrier on the floor shifted. Rachel gasped. Something inside scratched violently. Eli raised the catch pole. The carrier rocked once, then tipped over. A black shape burst from it and ran straight at us. I swung the flashlight. The animal leaped. Rachel screamed. The shape struck my shin and ricocheted into the wall. A cat, small, black, wearing a purple recovery cone. It skidded on the tile, scrambled upright, and vanished beneath a bench. For several seconds, all we could do was breathe. My leg burned where its claws had caught through my work pants. Eli lowered the pole. "Terrifying intruder," he said. His voice shook. Denise looked at the broken carrier latch. It wasn't secured. Rachel bent over, one hand pressed to her bandaged arm. "That cat was in recovery this afternoon." "How did it get here?" I asked. "Volunteer transfer, probably." The explanation fit. The sound, the movement, the sudden rush through darkness, all ordinary. It did nothing to help. We left the cat under the bench. There was no time to retrieve it safely. The medical door was locked. Denise tried the master key. It turned, but did not open. She pushed harder. "Deadbolt," she said. "From inside?" Eli asked. "Yes." "Is there another way?" "Treatment room window." The medical suite shared an interior observation window with the cat wing. It was reinforced glass, waist high, meant for staff to watch recovery cages. Eli shone his phone through it. The treatment room beyond was empty. At least, the part we could see. Medicine cabinets lined the back wall. The stainless exam table stood beneath a surgical light. On the floor near the refrigerator lay a white extension cord, cut cleanly in two. "Can we break the window?" I asked. "Laminated," Rachel said. "It'll spider, but not fall." Denise tried the door again. Something shifted behind it. A metal tray rolled across the treatment room floor and struck the wall. We froze. Then a low moan came from inside. "Human," Eli said. "Someone's hurt." "Or trying to get us to open it," Denise replied. The moan came again. Weak. Rachel pressed close to the glass. "Dr. Sloan," no answer. She struck the window with her palm. "Dr. Sloan." A hand rose slowly from behind the exam table. Just the hand. Blood coated the fingers. Rachel reached for the door. Denise stopped her. "We need to know who it is," Rachel shouted through the glass. "Say your name." The hand dropped. A man's voice answered, barely audible. "Martin." Dr. Martin Sloan, a 58-year-old man, was the shelter's contract veterinarian. He was methodical to the point of irritation, distrustful of digital records, and famous for carrying 3 pens in his breast pocket because, as he often said, computers failed and ink usually did not. He had not been scheduled that night either. "Why is he here?" Denise asked. Rachel stared at her. "You tell me," Martin groaned again. Eli looked at the hinges. "They're on our side." "Security pins," Denise said. "We can still punch them." "With what?" The catch pole was too light. Rachel pointed toward the fire extinguisher cabinet. "We used the extinguisher as a hammer." The first strike flattened the hinge cap. The second sent pain through Eli's wrist. The third drove the pin down a fraction. It took 6 more hits to remove the top pin, and 7 for the bottom. By then, Eli's palm had split at the base of his thumb. My shoulder had tightened into a hard knot from holding the door steady. Rachel had soaked through the gauze at her forearm. The door still held at the deadbolt. Denise wedged the extinguisher nozzle into the hinge side. "Pull." We pulled. The frame groaned. The laminated viewing glass bowed. Then the metal door tore away from the lower hinge, enough for Eli to squeeze through. Disappeared into medical. A moment later, he said, "Clear." We entered. Martin lay behind the exam table with his ankles bound by white medical tape. More tape circled his wrists. Blood came from a cut at his scalp and ran into one ear. He was conscious. "Don't move your neck," Rachel said, dropping beside him. Martin blinked up at her. "Did you bring the police?" "No." His eyes closed. Then he got what he wanted. "Who?" Denise asked. Martin looked toward the medication refrigerator. Its door stood open. The shelves were empty. "What was taken?" Rachel asked. Martin swallowed. "Ketamine, pentobarbital, sedatives, controlled drug log." Denise went still. "Those drugs could immobilize animals or people." "How long were you here?" I asked. "I got a call from the shelter. Emergency seizure case. Man met me at the loading bay." "Did you see him? Mask. Was he alone?" Martin looked toward the ceiling. I heard another voice. "What voice?" "Woman, maybe recording." Couldn't tell. A bang sounded from the cat wing door behind us. Then another. They had followed our route. We cut Martin's restraints. He tried to stand and nearly collapsed. Rachel caught him with her good arm. "We need rear exit," Denise said. Medical opened into isolation through a sealed door. Isolation led to 6 outdoor runs, and beyond them, the rear yard. From the yard, we could reach the perimeter fence and the road. Second escape attempt. We moved through isolation with Martin between Eli and Rachel. The air there had gone stale. Without ventilation, the smell of bleach, mucus, and wet newspaper sat thick in the throat. 2 coughing dogs panted behind plexiglass doors. Condensation fogged the small windows. At the rear exit, Denise turned the handle. It opened. Rain blew in. For the first time, I believed we might actually get out. The exterior isolation runs formed a narrow concrete lane bordered by kennel fencing on the left and the building wall on the right. At the far end, 40 yards away, was the exercise yard gate. Beyond that stood the perimeter fence. We stepped outside. The rain was colder than I expected. Martin sagged. Eli adjusted his grip. "Keep moving." We passed the first run, empty. Second, occupied by a coughing beagle who backed into the corner. Third, empty. At the fourth, the exterior gate hung open. The chain had been cut. Bolt cutters. Denise stopped. Yard breach. The exercise yard gate ahead was also open. Beyond it, the perimeter fence had been cut from top to bottom and folded outward toward the road. An escape route, too obvious. Eli saw it too. He wants us to use this. Behind us, the isolation door slammed shut. The electronic lock clicked. We turned. Through the wired window, a hooded face appeared for less than a second, then vanished. Denise ran to the door. Locked. She used the master key. It no longer turned. The rain intensified, hammering the metal runs. A dog barked in the main yard. Not one of ours. A large black dog stepped through the cut in the perimeter fence. Its coat hung wet against its ribs. A length of orange rope trailed from its collar. Another appeared behind it. Then a third, loose dogs, all large, all moving toward the open exercise yard gate. Martin whispered, "Don't run." The first dog lowered its head. Eli raised the catch pole. My shoulder throbbed so sharply that my fingers went numb. Behind us, the isolation dogs began barking at the locked door. Ahead, the loose dogs spread across the narrow yard. Then the exterior lights came on. In the sudden glare, I saw what had been tied to the collar of the first dog. A laminated shelter kennel card. Kennel 14. The dog lunged. Eli stepped in front of Rachel and Martin. Denise reached for the citronella spray. I lifted the catch pole with one working arm. Behind us, smoke began leaking from the roof vent above medical. The gasoline, the electrical room, whatever had been prepared inside had finally caught. The building alarm started again. This time, it was the fire alarm. The rear exit remained locked. The cut fence was behind 3 advancing dogs, and every animal still inside the shelter began to howl. There was no route back. The black dog lunged, but not at us. It went for the orange rope trailing from its own collar. The line had snagged beneath the open exercise yard gate. When the dog hit the end of it, its front legs came off the ground, and the laminated Kennel 14 card snapped against its chest. Eli moved before I understood what he was doing. He stepped sideways, dropped the catch pole loop over the dog's head, and pulled just enough to redirect it away from Rachel and Martin. The animal spun. The aluminum shaft jerked through his hands. His injured palm opened again, leaving a dark streak down the pole. "Gate," he shouted. Denise ran to the exercise yard gate and pushed it closed against the second dog. The animal hit the chain link from the other side, jaws snapping through the gaps. The third dog circled wide toward the cut perimeter fence. The first dog twisted inside the catch loop, choking itself. "Slack," I yelled. "I know." Eli loosened the cable. The dog surged forward and slammed into his knees. He went down. The pole clattered across the concrete. I grabbed the shaft with my right hand. Pain tore through my shoulder so sharply that my grip failed for a second. The dog turned toward me, soaked coat raised along its spine, white foam hanging from its mouth. Not rabies, stress, exhaustion, maybe drugs. I planted one boot against the pole and pulled the control cable with my left hand. "Easy," I said, though my voice cracked. "Easy, easy." The dog threw its weight backward. My shoulder gave. Something shifted inside it with a thick, soft pop. My arm stopped working. I screamed and dropped to one knee. Denise caught the pole before it slid away. Together, she and Eli guided the dog into the empty fourth exterior run. Eli kicked the gate shut, while Denise held the cable through the fencing, then loosened it enough for the loop to fall free. The black dog retreated to the back wall. It did not attack the gate. It crouched there, trembling. "That dog sedated," Martin said. He was leaning against Rachel, one hand pressed to the cut in his scalp. "What?" Denise asked. "Look at the rear legs." Og's hindquarters swayed. Its paws crossed when it tried to stand. Its eyes were open too wide, pupils dilated despite the exterior lights. "Ketamine," Rachel asked. "Could be low dose, poorly administered." The second dog struck the exercise yard fence again. The third had stopped near the cut perimeter and was sniffing the grass. Smoke rolled thicker from the medical roof vent. The fire alarm pulsed inside the building, muffled by the walls. Denise looked at the isolation door. "We need back in." "That's where the fire is," Eli said. "That's where the animals are. It's also where the person with bolt cutters is." Denise's mouth tightened. Then the isolation door opened, not fully, 6 inches. A man stood behind the wired glass window, wearing the dark rain jacket. He held a black device in one hand, a remote control. In the other, a syringe. "Put the pole down," he called through the gap. His voice carried poorly through the rain. Rachel stiffened beside me. I know him. The man pushed the door wider. Caleb Voss, a 38-year-old man, had worked as a temporary facilities technician at the shelter during the previous winter, when the county had hired outside contractors to repair damaged drains and replace several kennel gates. I remembered him only after Rachel said his name. He had been narrow-faced and quiet, the kind of worker who entered rooms without greeting anyone, and seemed irritated when staff animals interrupted his tools. Now his beard was longer, a pale scar cut from the corner of his mouth toward his jaw. Caleb, Denise said. He smiled without warmth. You remembered. Put the syringe down. Put the spray down first. Denise still held the citronella can. She did not lower it. What did you do to the building? What the county does every day. Deferred maintenance. Behind him, smoke drifted through the isolation corridor. You set a fire, I said. He looked at me. Mara. Hearing my name from him made the rain feel suddenly colder. You've been very helpful, he continued. Feeding 14 right on schedule. The empty kennel, the missing food, the black hair. I looked at the dog trapped in the exterior run. You kept it there, for a few hours at a time. How? The outside divider doesn't latch when the chain is lifted from the service channel. I installed it. The guillotine divider, the outside run, the pieces of fresh kibble pushed against the rear wall. You came in through the yard, Eli said. Sometimes. The camera outage. Caleb lifted the remote. Signal jammer, cheap one. Camera 9 runs through an older wireless bridge. The others don't. The 52 missing seconds had not been a ghost in the machine. It had been a man standing outside the camera's angle, raising a divider he knew how to defeat. Why bring dogs here? Denise asked. Because nobody questions dog hair in a shelter. The second loose dog barked against the gate. Caleb glanced toward it. His attention lasted less than a second. Denise raised the citronella spray. He raised the syringe. Don't, Martin said. Caleb looked at him. You should still be tied up. You hit me badly, not badly enough. Martin's face went slack with fear. That was when I understood the syringe was not for a dog. What's in it? Rachel asked. Enough. The fire alarm stopped. The sudden absence of it made every dog inside audible. Barking, coughing, claws against doors. Then a heavier crash came from the main kennel wing. One gate, then another. Caleb's smile disappeared. That wasn't supposed to happen. What was? Denise demanded. The release timer. He looked at the remote in his hand. The rattling kennel latches, the administrator access. He had installed devices, not on every gate, on selected ones. The noises had not been someone walking down the corridor. They had been cheap actuator motors pulling safety clips and lifting handles one at a time. You're releasing them, Eli said. Only the evidence. What evidence? Caleb stepped outside and let the isolation door close behind him. It locked automatically. Now he was trapped with us too, or believed he controlled the way out. He pointed the syringe toward the black dog. That one came from a seizure in Licking County. Supposed to be held for court, it disappeared before trial. Stolen dog, Rachel said. Resold dog. For fighting, Caleb gave a small shrug. Breeding, security, fighting. People pay for different things. The shelter had been a transfer point. Empty kennel 14 was close to the service yard, partly hidden from camera 9 and listed as vacant. Dogs could be moved in briefly, fed, sedated, and taken out again before the morning shift. The software occupancy record had not been an error. It had been a template Caleb or someone else had accidentally triggered. And tonight, Denise asked, "Tonight you noticed?" "No," I said. "Tonight you knew we noticed." His eyes moved to the sealed bag clipped to Eli's belt. The black hairs. Eli had kept it. Caleb saw it too. "That belongs to me." "No," Eli said. Caleb took a step forward. The second dog struck the fence again. This time the latch shifted. Denise looked toward it. Caleb did not. He was watching the evidence bag. "You stole controlled drugs," Martin said. "You sabotaged electrical systems. You assaulted 2 people. There is no version of this where you walk away." "There is if the building burns." Rachel's breathing changed. The gasoline had not been poured to destroy the generator. It had been placed to create a fire investigators might blame on water reaching damaged electrical equipment. A plausible accident. Old building. Deferred repairs. Storm damage. Caleb pointed toward the cut perimeter fence. "Walk out. Leave the dog and the bag. You get to say you escaped a fire." "And the animals?" Denise asked. "County has insurance." Denise stepped toward him. "You think insurance replaces them?" "They replace them every day." He said it casually. That was the mistake. Denise had spent decades hearing people describe living animals as inventory, burdens, evidence, mistakes. Her shoulders lowered. Her face became almost calm. "Eli," she said. "He understood before I did." He kicked the bottom of the exercise yard gate. The damaged latch jumped free. The second dog burst through. Caleb spun. Denise sprayed. The citronella stream struck him across the eyes. He shouted and threw one arm over his face. The syringe dropped onto the concrete. The loose dog charged toward the motion. Eli grabbed the kennel board leaning against the exterior wall and drove it between the dog and Caleb. The animal collided with the plastic sheet, snapping and clawing. Inside, Denise yelled. Caleb stumbled backward toward the isolation door. Rachel swept the dropped syringe away with her shoe. Martin picked it up with a wad of gauze and shoved it into his coat pocket. Caleb wiped at his eyes. "You stupid," Denise hit him with the empty spray can. Once, across the nose. He fell against the isolation door. I saw the remote in his hand. I grabbed it. He closed his fingers around mine. My right arm hung useless. I used my left, twisting the remote against his thumb. He punched me in the shoulder. The injured joint shifted again. The world narrowed to white sparks and wet concrete. I dropped. Caleb kept the remote. Then Boomer hit the isolation window from inside. His huge head appeared behind the wired glass, barking through blood. Caleb jerked away. The door had not opened, but the distraction gave Eli time to swing the kennel board. Its edge struck Caleb behind the knees. He collapsed. Denise kicked the remote from his hand. It skidded beneath the exterior run fencing. Caleb grabbed her ankle and pulled. She fell hard. The back of her head struck concrete. She stopped moving. "Denise." Eli lunged toward her. Caleb rolled on top of him. They fought badly. Not like films. No clean punches. No controlled movement. hands slipping on rain jackets, knees scraping concrete, Eli's injured palm failing whenever he tried to grip, Caleb driving his forehead into Eli's cheek. Rachel dragged Denise away by the shoulders. Martin stood with the syringe in his hand, staring at it. "Don't," Rachel said. "I can stop him. You don't know the dose." "I know exactly what the dose is." Caleb struck Eli again. Eli sagged. Martin stepped forward with the syringe. Caleb saw him and kicked. His boot hit Martin in the chest. Martin fell backward against the kennel gate. The syringe flew from his hand and vanished into the drain channel. The black dog inside the run barked once. Caleb got to his feet. His nose was bleeding. His eyes streamed from the citronella. He reached inside his rain jacket and pulled out a folding knife. That changed everything. Eli crawled backward. Rachel positioned herself over Denise, holding pressure against the back of her head. I tried to stand. My right arm swung uselessly and sent another sick wave through my stomach. Caleb moved toward Eli. The third loose dog was still outside the exercise yard, watching through the open gate. Orange rope trailed from its neck too, not a lead, a restraint line. I grabbed it with my left hand. The dog recoiled. "Sorry," I whispered. Then I ran as far as the line allowed. The dog followed from reflex and panic. I angled toward Caleb. The line wrapped around his ankles. He looked down. Eli drove both feet into his knees. Caleb fell forward. The knife struck the concrete and slid beneath the kennel board. The loose dog bolted, pulling the rope tight. Caleb's legs snapped together. His chin hit the ground. A flat, ugly impact. He stopped moving for 2 seconds, then began groaning. Eli rolled onto him and pinned one arm beneath his knee. I took the orange rope and looped it around Caleb's wrists. My knots were clumsy one-handed, so Martin tightened them. "Keys," Denise whispered. She was conscious again. Barely. Blood had soaked the back of Rachel's sleeve where she supported Denise's head. "His keys," Denise repeated. Rachel searched Caleb's jacket. She found her stolen key ring, 2 shelter access cards, a small radio, wire cutters, a burner phone, and a metal key with a red plastic head. "Utility room," I said. "The red generator key." Caleb laughed weakly against the concrete. "You can't save them now." Smoke spread beneath the isolation door. Boomer barked behind it, then coughed. We had stopped the man. The building was still burning. Rachel used her access card. The reader flashed red. Denise's master key failed again. Caleb had mechanically deadlocked the door. "Exterior divider," I said. Everyone looked at me. "The isolation runs connect through the guillotine doors. We can get into the occupied run, lift the inner divider manually, and crawl through." "With the dog inside," Eli said. The coughing beagle occupied the second run. The first was empty. Its interior divider had no visible handle outside, but the chain ran through a narrow service conduit above the gate, the same design as Kennel 14. Caleb had taught us how he defeated it. Eli used the bolt cutters from Caleb's belt to cut the conduit cover. Martin hooked the chain with the catch pole. We pulled. The divider lifted 12 inches. Smoke poured through the opening. Not thick black fire smoke. Gray, chemical smoke from melting plastic and burning insulation. Enough to kill animals in enclosed runs. "I can fit," Rachel said. "You're bleeding," Eli replied. "So are you." "I'm smaller," I said. My shoulder hung low and wrong. I was dizzy, but I could crawl one-armed. Eli shook his head. "We go together." He held the divider while I slid beneath it. Concrete scraped my chest. Inside isolation, visibility was down to 20 feet. The fire had started in medical, but had not yet spread into open flame here. Smoke moved along the ceiling. Sprinklers had failed with the sabotaged water line. Boomer stood outside the isolation door. He had followed the corridor after escaping intake. Blood covered his muzzle. He barked at me, then stumbled. A dart protruded from his hind leg. Caleb had sedated him. "Boomer," I said. He swayed toward me. I expected him to bite. Instead, he pressed his head against my chest. I clipped a slip lead around his neck with my left hand. Eli crawled through behind me. We unlocked the isolation door from inside. Rachel and Martin brought Denise in. Caleb remained outside, bound to the kennel gate with orange rope. The loose dogs had retreated from the smoke. "Main kennel," Denise said. "You need to get out," Rachel told her. "Main kennel." There was no time to argue. We split. Rachel and Martin dragged Denise toward the front lobby, using a folded kennel blanket as a sling. Eli and I moved into the main corridor, with Boomer staggering between us. 3 kennel gates stood open. 2 dogs were loose. One had already collapsed from smoke. The third open run was Kennel 14. Inside it, beneath the failing fluorescent light, we found a plastic storage tote hidden under the raised bed. The lid was cracked. Inside were paper kennel cards, stolen microchip scanners, collars, syringes, prepaid phones, and Dr. Sloan's controlled drug log. Evidence. Caleb had returned to remove it. I grabbed the tote. Eli took the collapsed dog. We opened every exterior divider we could reach, pushing animals into the open rear runs away from the smoke. Some went willingly. Others had to be driven with boards and blankets. One terrier bit Eli through his pants. A shepherd raked my cheek with a claw when I leaned too close. We did not save all of them. The coughing beagle in isolation stopped breathing before Rachel could return. A senior pit bull in Kennel 6 never got up from his bed. By the time we reached the front lobby, the outer crash bar had expanded enough from the earlier forcing that Eli could kick it open. Rain entered. So did clean air. Rachel crawled outside first and found one bar of service near the parking lot gate. She called 911. No sudden rescue. No engines already waiting. We spent 11 more minutes moving animals into the fenced front adoption yard while smoke thickened behind us. Firefighters arrived after the roof over medical had begun to flame. Police found Caleb still tied outside isolation, conscious and trying to cut the rope against the kennel wire. They also found the burner phones, the stolen drugs in a backpack near the warehouse, and 4 transport crates hidden in his van. The black dog from Kennel 14 survived. So did Boomer. Denise was taken away with a skull fracture. Eli had 2 broken fingers, a bite wound in his thigh, and 6 stitches in his face. My shoulder was fully dislocated, with nerve damage that left 2 fingers numb. Caleb went into the back of a police cruiser with blood under his nose. and citronella soaked into his beard. As they drove him away, he turned his head toward the shelter. Not toward us, toward Kennel 14. The fluorescent light above it was still flickering through the smoke. On, off, on. And in the exterior run, the black dog lowered its head over an empty stainless steel bowl and licked it clean. The first thing the emergency room doctor did was ask me whether I could feel my fingers. I could feel 3 of them. My thumb and index finger were numb except for a dull pressure when he squeezed them, as though he were touching somebody else's hand, and the message had taken a long route to reach me. He asked again. Any tingling? Yes. Pins and needles. More like static. He nodded without looking reassured. My shoulder had been out for almost 2 hours by then. The paramedics had immobilized my arm against my body and given me pain medication in the ambulance, enough to make the ceiling lights stretch when I turned my head, but not enough to stop the joint from throbbing with every heartbeat. They took X-rays. No fracture. That was the good news. The bad news was that the nerves had been compressed, and nobody could promise how quickly sensation would return. A nurse cut my shelter shirt from collar to sleeve. The fabric peeled away stiff with rainwater, smoke, dog saliva, and blood. Some of the blood was mine. Most of it was not. "Do you want us to save this?" she asked. I looked at the shirt on the tray. The embroidered county logo was blackened at the shoulder. There was a torn place near the hem where Boomer's lead had caught while we moved him through the lobby. "No," I said then, immediately. "Actually, yes." The nurse folded it into a clear plastic bag without asking why. I did not know why. Maybe because I needed proof that the night had been physical, that it had happened to fabric and skin and bone, not just memory. The doctor sedated me before reducing the shoulder. I remember him saying, "You'll feel pressure." I remember the ceiling tile above me had a water stain shaped like a bent thumb. Then I woke with my arm strapped across my chest and Rachel sitting in a chair beside the bed. Her forearm had been stitched and wrapped. The black jacket was gone. She wore a hospital blanket around her shoulders and held a paper cup with both hands. "Did they fix it?" she asked. I looked down, my arms still attached. "That's encouraging." Her voice sounded normal, which made the rest of her look worse. Her face had gone gray with fatigue. Dried blood remained beneath one fingernail. "Denise," I asked. "Surgery." My mouth went dry. "For what?" "Bleeding around the fracture. They said it was small. They're monitoring pressure." "Is she awake?" "She was when they took her up." Rachel looked into her cup. She asked whether the dogs were counted. Of course she had. Eli, getting his hands set. They're irrigating the bite. Martin, 4 cracked ribs, concussion. He keeps trying to correct the nurses when they call him Mister. That sounded like Martin too. Outside the room, a cart rattled over a threshold. Someone coughed behind a curtain. The hospital had its own night sounds, repetitive and practical. Nothing like the shelter, even though both places ran on bleach, fluorescent lighting, and people trying to prevent things from getting worse. "Boomer?" I asked. Rachel looked up. "Alive." The word came out carefully. "He's at Ohio State's Veterinary Hospital. Aspiration risk from whatever Caleb gave him. Broken canine tooth, bruising, but alive. The black dog, also alive. They found a microchip." That fast. Police scanned him at the scene. The chip was still registered to a family in Newark. I tried to sit up. Pain tightened around my shoulder. Rachel stood and pressed the bed control instead. Don't. Was he stolen? 2 years ago. That landed differently from everything else. 2 years. For 2 years, somebody had known that dog as missing. Maybe checked shelters. Maybe refreshed lost pet pages. Maybe slowed down when they saw black dogs behind fences. And on our side, he had become hair in a bowl. A shape moving where a kennel should have been empty. Did they call the family? Detectives did. Are they coming? I don't know. She sat again. We were quiet for a while, not because there was nothing to say, because saying anything required choosing one part of the night and admitting the rest would wait. A detective interviewed me at 4 a.m. Detective Paul Mercer, a 42-year-old man, wore a damp suit jacket and carried 2 phones, a legal pad, and the strained patience of someone who had already heard 3 incomplete versions of the same event. He told me the interview could wait. I told him it could not. That was the routine problem in me again. Facts had to be put in order before they softened at the edges. He sat near the foot of the bed and asked me to begin with the first unusual thing. The bowl, I said. What bowl? The one in Kennel 14. I described filling it by accident, the missing food, the black hair, the damp kibble, the camera gap. He asked exact times when I knew them. When I did not know, he told me not to estimate. He asked whether I had ever seen Caleb Voss inside the building after his contract ended. No. Did you communicate with him? No. Did any staff member? I don't know. Did you ever hear concerns about kennel access? No. About missing controlled drugs? No animals transferred without complete records? That question held me. Sometimes records lag. How often? Enough that it didn't automatically mean theft. He wrote that down. I hated seeing it on paper. How many people had access to Kennel 14? Anyone with animal care keys. Supervisors, medical staff, maintenance, volunteers. Not officially. Could they have some new door codes? Current codes? I don't know. He stopped writing. That was the first moment the scale of it became clear. Caleb had used our weaknesses, but he had not invented all of them. Shared codes, deferred repairs, unreviewed access cards, kennels marked vacant while paperwork caught up, broken cameras tolerated because they mostly worked. Mostly worked was enough until somebody needed 52 seconds. Detective Mercer asked about the woman's voice Martin had heard. I had nothing to give him. He asked whether Caleb had spoken to anyone over the radio. I remembered the Unit 5 transmission, the scraping, 3 pulls and a pause. It could have been pre-recorded, I said. Could have been. Did you find the radio? Yes. Anything on it? Not yet. His answer meant he knew more than he was saying. Before he left, he placed a property receipt on the table. The police had taken my phone, the plastic bag of black hair, Eli's evidence pouch, Caleb's remote, the storage tote, the recovered kennel cards, access devices, bolt cutters, burner phones, and the clothes we had been wearing. I pointed to the clear bag with my cut shelter shirt. That too, he looked at it. Probably. I almost objected. Then I handed it over. By daylight, local news vans were parked outside the shelter. I saw them on the hospital television with the sound muted. The building looked smaller on screen. Fire damage had blackened the roof above medical. Yellow tape crossed the front entrance. Firefighters moved in and out carrying equipment. Someone had covered the county sign with a blue tarp. The captions changed every few minutes. Animal shelter fire under investigation. Former contractor arrested. Multiple staff injured. Possible stolen animal operation uncovered. The phrasing bothered me. Possible operation uncovered. Those words were clean. They did not show Eli dragging a smoke-heavy dog by a blanket because his broken fingers could no longer close. They did not show Denise asking for the count while blood ran into her collar. They did not show the beagle in isolation, lying with its nose against the door. The official animal count came that afternoon. 46 animals had been in the building when the power failed. 42 survived the night. 2 dogs died during the fire. 1 cat was found dead beneath a bank of cages in medical recovery. Another dog, a senior shepherd from the main wing, was euthanized the next morning because of severe smoke injury and pre-existing heart disease. The black recovery cat from the carrier survived. A firefighter found him under the adoption bench, still wearing the purple cone. When Rachel told me, I laughed once. It did not sound like laughter. I was discharged late the following day with a sling, pain medication, physical therapy instructions, and a referral to a nerve specialist. Eli stayed another night. Denise stayed 9 days. She underwent surgery, developed headaches that made bright light unbearable, and temporarily lost part of her hearing in the left ear. The first time I visited, she had the blinds closed and a folded towel over her eyes. "You look terrible," she said. "You have staples in your head." That doesn't answer me. Her speech was slower than usual, not slurred, measured. She asked for the final animal list. I had brought a copy, although Rachel had told me not to. Denise read every name. When she reached the dead animals, she stopped. The room's air unit clicked on. Neither of us said anything for almost a minute. Finally, she folded the paper. "We followed the emergency plan," she said. "Parts of it. The plan was garbage." I did not disagree. She looked toward the closed blinds. "I kept telling the county we needed the rear cameras replaced. I know. I have emails. I know. I'm going to give them to the detective." "Good." Her jaw tightened. Then she asked, "Did we leave the beagle too long?" There it was. Not Supervisor Denise. Not the woman who had ordered us forward. Just somebody going back over the same minutes, searching for a place where one decision might have split into another. "No," I said. I do not know whether that was true. I said it anyway. Eli returned to work before any of us. Not animal handling. Inventory. He sat in a temporary county office and reviewed recovered kennel cards, microchip records, transfer logs, and intake photographs. His left hand was splinted, and the bite wound required daily dressing changes. He told me later that paperwork was the only thing he could stand. Dogs barking behind gates made his hands shake. He could hear a metal bowl fall 3 rooms away and lose track of what he was saying. The investigation spread quickly. Caleb had 4 transport crates in his van, but records linked him to at least 11 dogs over 18 months. Some came from seizure cases. Some were reported missing by owners. 3 had passed through partner rescues using altered transfer documents. 2 were found alive at properties outside Columbus. The rest were not found. The burner phones connected Caleb to a kennel operator in West Virginia and a private security dog trainer in Indiana. Both denied knowing the animals were stolen. A county employee in facilities had approved repeated temporary access extensions on Caleb's expired card. He claimed it was an oversight. Detectives seized his computers anyway. The woman's voice Martin heard remained unresolved for months. Caleb insisted there was no woman. Police believed he had used pre-recorded audio for some calls and radio transmissions, but one of the shelter phone calls was placed while Caleb's known burner was moving near the staff parking lot. That suggested either a second person or another device left inside. No one was charged as an accomplice before Caleb's case went to court. He accepted a plea agreement the following spring. Burglary, arson, assault, theft of controlled substances, animal cruelty, tampering with evidence. The trafficking charges were complicated by jurisdiction and records that had been deliberately corrupted. He received 23 years. I did not attend sentencing. Rachel did. Martin submitted a statement, but stayed home. Denise watched remotely with the sound turned low. Eli drove to the courthouse, sat in the parking garage for 20 minutes, and left before going inside. The black dog's name was Cinder. His original owners had called him that because of a small gray patch beneath his chin. When they came to identify him, he did not run to them. Not at first. 2 years had changed the way he responded to voices and hands. The family sat on the floor at the veterinary hospital and waited. After almost half an hour, Cinder walked to the mother and pressed his nose against her sleeve. That was all. They took him home 3 weeks later. Boomer recovered too. His owner did not return calls. A Mastiff rescue outside Cincinnati accepted him after his bite evaluation showed defensive behavior, but no unprovoked aggression. He needed dental surgery and months of rehabilitation. Eli kept a photograph of Boomer asleep on a couch at his foster home. He never admitted that he checked it every morning. The shelter closed for 6 months. Medical had to be rebuilt. The ventilation system was replaced. Every access card was revoked. New cameras went up inside and outside, with overlapping views and local hardwired storage. Door codes became individual credentials. Vacant kennels required 2-person verification before being removed from daily rounds. Kennel 14 was stripped to concrete. The raised bed, divider chain, drain cover, and gate were all taken as evidence. When the run reopened, the county renumbered the wing. There was no Kennel 14 anymore. The sequence went 11, 12, 13, 15. Someone said it would help staff. It did not. I went back to work 9 months after the fire. My thumb regained full sensation. My index finger did not. It still prickles when I lift anything above shoulder height, and I cannot rotate my arm far enough to fasten a bra behind my back. Physical therapy helped. Time helped more. first week back, I worked mornings, public hours. I had once preferred the building empty, but I could no longer stand being alone in the corridors after dark. I needed adopters talking in the lobby, printers running, volunteers dropping leashes, someone laughing too loudly in the break room. Noise meant witnesses. Routine changed too. I stopped trusting it. That sounds healthy until you live it. I checked bowls, then photographed them. Checked gates, then tugged them twice. Logged feedings, and took screenshots of the log. When the software froze, I wrote the time on my wrist. For months, I carried a marker in my pocket. Denise never returned full-time. She consulted on policy, mostly from home. Bright fluorescent lights still triggered migraines. Rachel transferred to a private veterinary clinic. Martin retired. Eli remained at the shelter, but moved into investigations and animal transport. He said vehicles made sense because they either started or they did not. Sometimes they did both, but I let him have the sentence. On my first closing shift after returning, I nearly quit. The new lights were brighter. The cameras were better. The floors had been resealed, and the building smelled of fresh paint over old disinfectant. At 8:17 p.m., I reached the run that had replaced Kennel 14. Kennel 15. Inside was a brown shepherd mix named Olive, transferred from a rural county after her owner died. I filled her bowl. She did not eat. She stood at the rear divider, staring through the gate into the exterior run. "What is it?" I asked. Her ears shifted forward. I checked the camera feed on my phone. Exterior clear. Gate secured. No movement. I opened the divider. Olive stepped outside. The security light caught the wet concrete. Nothing there. Then I saw 3 pieces of kibble pressed into the corner where the wall met the fence. Softened by water, grouped together. I stared at them longer than I should have. There were explanations. Food left from morning cleaning. Kibble stuck in a drain seam. A maintenance worker feeding a dog during repairs. Olive carrying it outside. I took a photograph, logged the time, bagged the pieces. Then I heard a bowl scrape behind me. I turned too fast, and pain shot through my shoulder. Olive stood inside the kennel with one paw against the stainless steel dish, pushing it across the floor. Ordinary, completely ordinary. I laughed under my breath. She looked at me, uncertain. I closed the divider and sat beside the gate until she began eating. The shelter settled around us. Ventilation humming. Printers clicking in the distant office. A volunteer rolling laundry down the corridor. Almost ordinary. Before I left, I checked the camera again. The exterior run was empty, but the motion log showed a 52-second interruption at 7:30 p.m., exactly 52 seconds. The new system did not use the old wireless bridge. It called it a corrupted file. They replaced the storage unit the next day. The error never happened again. That is what I tell people. It never happened again. The shadows fade for now, but the stories never end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and join our community of horror lovers. If you're hungry for more, check out the next video. Just remember, the scariest part is often the one you don't see coming. Welcome back to Mia Horror Stories. Tonight's tale, I'm a hotel valet, but the cars I park come back with different drivers is best experienced in the dark, which is why the screen will stay black. No distractions, no flashing images, just you, your imagination, and the story. So sit back, relax, and listen all the way to the end if you dare. The first thing that bothered me was not that the man behind the wheel was different. It was that the seat was still warm. I had parked the Audi less than 12 minutes earlier, a gray A6 with Illinois plates, and a pine tree air freshener hanging from the mirror. The owner had been a heavy-set man in a navy overcoat who complained that our overnight rate was higher than the garage at the Hyatt. He had handed me the key fob with 2 fingers, like it was something damp, then walked into the hotel dragging a silver suitcase with 1 bad wheel. Now the Audi was back at the valet stand. Same license plate, same scrape above the rear passenger tire, same half-empty plastic cup wedged in the front console. But the man sitting in the driver's seat was younger, thinner, and wearing a faded green sweatshirt. He lowered the window. "You guys open all night?" For a second, I thought one of the other valets had brought the car down and moved the ticket without telling me. That happened sometimes when the lobby got busy. Somebody grabbed the wrong keys. Somebody skipped the whiteboard. Somebody decided to help without explaining what they were helping with. Normal workplace stupidity. There was plenty of it. Then the younger man looked at me and said, "You gonna take it or what?" My name is Daniel Mercer. I was 31 years old that winter, male, recently separated, and working nights at the Halcyon Hotel in downtown Milwaukee because the shift paid $2 more an hour and let me avoid most of the people I owed explanations to. The Halcyon sat on East Wisconsin Avenue, 6 blocks from the lake, in a limestone building that used to be an insurance office. It had brass doors, a narrow revolving entrance, and one of those lobbies designed to smell expensive. Cedar oil, coffee, furniture polish. During December, management added cinnamon diffusers near the elevators, so the whole first floor smelled like somebody had baked a chair. Our valet lane ran along the north side of the building, beneath a heated awning. Heated was a generous word. The overhead units made a humming sound and dripped rusty water when the snow melted, but they kept ice from forming directly over the guests' heads, which was all the hotel's lawyers cared about. The valet garage was 2 blocks away under an office building on Mason Street. We drove the cars through an alley, turned past a loading dock, entered through a rolling steel gate, and parked them on levels B2 or B3. During weekday nights, most of the garage belonged to us. It was 10:42 p.m. on a Thursday, cold enough that exhaust hung low under the awning. I checked the Audi's front plate again. Illinois. DZ 74,419. The number on the paper tag hanging from the mirror was 186. That was my handwriting. "You staying with us?" I asked. The man leaned toward the window. "What? At the Halcyon?" "No, picking somebody up." He had a narrow face, maybe 25, with pale stubble and a small silver hoop in his left ear. His hands stayed at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. That struck me as odd. People pulled up to valet stands with one hand on their phones elbows on windows, fingers digging through cup holders. Nobody held a steering wheel like they were taking a driving test. I looked toward the hotel doors. The man in the navy overcoat had not come back out. "Do you have the claim ticket?" "The what?" "The valet ticket." "I just told you, I'm picking somebody up." Behind him, a black Suburban turned into the lane and stopped too close to the Audi's bumper. Headlights filled the younger man's mirrors. He glanced back, then at me. He seemed annoyed, but not confused. That mattered later. At the time, I reached through the window, took the key fob from his hand, and tore a new ticket from my pad. Normal procedure. That was what I told myself. Cars changed hands constantly. Husbands brought in vehicles registered to wives. Assistants picked up bosses. Drunk guests handed keys to sober friends. Rental cars came and went with names that meant nothing. I wrote 214 on the ticket. The younger man took it. "Don't lose that," I said. "Wasn't planning to." He got out, pulled his hood up, and walked toward the corner instead of entering the hotel. That was the second thing that bothered me. The third was that the driver's seat had been pushed back 6 inches from where I had left it. Other valet working the stand that night was Luis Ortega, 24, male, born in Racine, and studying radiologic technology at Milwaukee Area Technical College. Luis had the kind of face that always looked on the verge of laughing, even when he was angry, and he coped with stress by turning everything into a joke before anybody else could make it serious. He came out of the hotel carrying 2 claim tickets and an open can of Monster. "You taking that one?" he asked. "I parked it already." He looked at the Audi, then at me. "Okay, like 10 minutes ago." Luis took a drink. "You want me to congratulate you?" I nodded toward the hotel doors. Different guy brought it back. Different from who? The guest. What guest? The guy who checked it in. Luis stared at me for a moment, waiting for the punchline. When none came, he stepped closer to the Audi and looked through the rear window. Maybe his kid walked away. Maybe he hates hotels. He said he was picking someone up. Luis shrugged. Maybe he is. I wanted to leave it there. That was one of my flaws, not curiosity, the opposite. I had spent most of my adult life avoiding the moment when a strange thing became my responsibility. Unopened bills, a knocking engine, a marriage that had been failing in obvious, audible ways for almost a year before my wife finally packed 2 suitcases and moved into her sister's apartment in Wauwatosa. If I could rename a problem as something ordinary, I usually did. The Audi was a mix-up. The younger man was a relative. The first driver had given him the keys. There, solved, I slid into the car. The cabin smelled faintly of cigarettes beneath the pine air freshener. The dashboard clock read 10:44. A sports radio station was playing quietly, the host arguing about the Packers' secondary. When I pressed the brake, I noticed the rubber floor mat was wet. Not snow wet. There were no salt crystals or slush around the pedals. It looked like somebody had stepped into shallow water and then climbed inside. I touched the edge of the mat with one gloved finger. Cold. Luis bent down beside the window. "You checking for fingerprints now, detective?" "Mat's wet. Breaking news. Milwaukee has weather. There's no snow in it." Luis gave me a long look. Then the revolving door turned, and both of us straightened automatically. The woman who came outside was Evelyn Price, 46, female, the Halcyon's night manager. Evelyn wore her blonde hair in a tight knot and moved with the brisk, controlled energy of someone who believed emergencies could be prevented by walking fast enough. She had worked at the hotel for 14 years and treated every guest complaint as both a personal accusation and a possible lawsuit. "Gentlemen," she said, "we have 3 arrivals due from the airport and a wedding party returning from the 3rd ward. Please stop examining the upholstery." Lewis stepped away from the Audi. "Daniel," I told myself, "put the car away." I drove it to the garage. The alley behind the Halcyon was narrow and loud. Snowmelt ran beneath the tires. A refrigeration unit above a restaurant loading door rattled hard enough to shake its metal housing. Someone had stacked black trash bags along the brick wall, and the air smelled like fryer oil and frozen garbage. At the garage entrance, I held the fob against the reader. The gate rolled up. The Audi's headlights passed over concrete pillars painted with yellow stripes. Water clicked steadily through pipes overhead. On B2, the fluorescent fixtures buzzed in alternating tones, one slightly higher than the next, creating a pulse as I drove beneath them. I parked in space 38. That was where I had parked it before. The space was empty when I arrived. I sat there with the engine running. First time, I had backed the Audi into 38 because the hotel preferred all vehicles nose out for faster retrieval. I remembered the pillar beside it. I remembered folding the driver's mirror in manually because it sat close to the concrete. There was no other gray Audi nearby. No duplicate plate. No explanation except that somebody had retrieved the car after I parked it. That happened through the valet office. The key cabinet was electronically logged. Evelyn would know. I turned off the engine. The radio cut out, leaving only the faint ticking of cooling metal. On the passenger seat was a hotel envelope I had not noticed before. Cream paper, Halcyon logo embossed in gold. My first thought was that the original driver had left it there. Maybe his room number, maybe a receipt. I picked it up. The envelope was unsealed. Inside was a valet claim ticket. Number 186. The ticket I had given the man in the navy overcoat. For a while, I just sat there. The garage lights reflected across the windshield in long white bars. Somewhere above me, a car crossed the ramp and made the concrete ceiling tremble. I turned the ticket over. Nothing written on the back. Guests left things in cars all the time. That part was ordinary. But the original driver had taken the ticket from me before entering the hotel. I had watched him fold it once and place it in his coat pocket. I checked the door pocket, center console, and floor. No overcoat, no suitcase, nothing that belonged to a hotel guest. My phone vibrated. A message from Lewis. Evelyn says stop disappearing. Wedding party hit the lobby. I put the claim ticket in my jacket. Then I got out and locked the Audi. Back at the stand, the lane had become crowded. A white Mercedes idled beneath the awning while Lewis unloaded garment bags. 2 women in heels stood near the revolving door, laughing too loudly and arguing over who had the room key. A man in a tuxedo smoked beside a no smoking sign. For For 10 minutes, work returned everything to normal. I parked the Mercedes, retrieved a Jeep, carried luggage, apologized for the cold as though I had arranged it. Then Evelyn called me over. She stood just inside the lobby beside the concierge desk. Behind her, the gas fireplace made small blue flames beneath ceramic logs. "Did you check in an Audi twice?" she asked. Louis was beside her, suddenly no longer smiling. I pulled the ticket from my jacket. "Why?" Evelyn held up a tablet showing our valet system. Vehicle 186 was retrieved at 10:36. I didn't retrieve it. Your login did. I stared at the screen. The entry showed my employee number, the plate, and the retrieval time. 10:36 p.m., 6 minutes before the younger man brought the car back. "That's impossible," I said. Evelyn's mouth tightened. She disliked that word. The system does not invent employee numbers. Somebody used my login. "Did you leave your handheld unattended?" "No." Louis looked toward the doors. "Who requested it?" he asked. Evelyn tapped the screen. "That is the problem. The guest name field was blank. The room number field was blank. Only the vehicle information remained. I took out my phone and checked the time without knowing why. 11:08. The man in the navy overcoat had still not returned to the stand. "Can we look at the camera?" I asked. Evelyn crossed her arms. The security office was in the basement, and hotel policy said recorded footage could only be reviewed by management or police. She followed policy with almost religious commitment, especially when breaking it might create paperwork. "Look for what?" she said. "The person who picked up the Audi. You said the current driver may have been related to the guest." I said maybe. And now, I looked through the brass-framed lobby windows. Outside, the Audi's new claim number, 214, was listed on the valet board beside its parking space. The younger man had not returned. Louis lowered his voice. "We could check the key cabinet log first." Evelyn glanced at him. "That would tell us who removed the fob," he continued. "No cameras, no policy problem. Technically true. The cabinet logged every time a key was placed inside or taken out, along with the employee code used to open the drawer. The cabinet was in a narrow back room behind the valet desk. Checking the log would take less than a minute. Evelyn hesitated. The revolving door turned again. The heavy-set man in the navy overcoat stepped into the lobby from the street. Not from the elevators, not from the bar, from outside. His silver suitcase rolled behind him, the bad wheel knocking against the stone floor. He scanned the lobby, saw me, and raised one hand. "Valet," he called. "I need my Audi." Louis looked at me. I could feel the paper ticket in my jacket pressing against my ribs. The man approached the desk and handed Evelyn another claim stub. "Number 186. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Evelyn looked from his ticket to mine. The fireplace clicked softly behind her. "Daniel," she said, almost whispering now, "go pull the cabinet log." I should have refused. I should have handed the problem to Evelyn, finished my shift, and gone home to my half-empty apartment, where the only unexplained noises came from old plumbing. Instead, I followed Louis through the employee door, and Evelyn came with us. The key cabinet log was worse than the valet screen, because it was specific. Specific things are harder to dismiss. The cabinet sat in a room barely wide enough for 2 people, mounted above a scarred laminate counter where we kept spare ticket rolls and bottled water. It had 6 locking drawers, each divided into numbered hooks. A small touchscreen glowed blue beside the handle. Lewis entered his code, opened the audit menu, and searched vehicle 186. The screen showed 4 entries. 10:21 p.m. Key deposited, employee 472. That was me. 10:35 p.m. Key removed, employee 472, also me. 10:49 p.m. Key deposited, employee 0911 Lewis. 10:51 p.m. Key removed, employee 472, me again. Lewis read the last line twice. I didn't put that key back, he said. Evelyn stood behind us with her arms folded tight across her jacket. You just said the second driver handed it to Daniel. He did. And then Daniel took the car. I drove it to the garage, I said. I never brought the fob into this room. Evelyn leaned closer to the screen. Then why does it say Lewis deposited it? I don't know. And why does it say you removed it 2 minutes later? I don't know. That answer sounded weaker each time. Lewis opened the drawer assigned to the Audi. The hook was empty. Nobody spoke. From the lobby came the muffled sound of the heavy-set guest raising his voice. Where is my car? The words reached us through the employee door and the wall. Evelyn closed her eyes for half a second. It was the closest I had ever seen her come to visibly losing patience. Stay here, she said. She stepped into the lobby. Lewis and I stared at the empty hook. I watched you take it, he said quietly. Take what? The fob from Hoodie Guy. I know, you drove the Audi down. I know. So either you still have it, I don't, or you left it in the car. I locked the car. Lewis rubbed his mouth. The joke that usually arrived when he got nervous did not come. I checked my pockets anyway. Jacket, pants, the small zipped pocket where I kept cash tips. No Audi fob. The claim ticket, numbered 186, was still there. You ever give anybody your code? Lewis asked. No, you type it where guests can see. It's 4 numbers. Everybody's code is 4 numbers. That's not what I asked. Before I could answer, Evelyn pushed the door open. The guest's name is Martin Voss, she said. He says there is a company laptop and prescription medication in the trunk. He also says he did not authorize anybody to retrieve the vehicle. Martin Voss, 52 male, was the heavy-set man in the navy overcoat. Up close, his face had gone blotchy around the cheeks, and damp strands of gray hair clung to his forehead. His irritation had sharpened into the focused anger of someone trying not to panic in public. He stood behind Evelyn, clutching both claim ticket 186 and the handle of his silver suitcase. I want the police called, he said. Evelyn turned slightly. Mr. Voss, I've contacted hotel security. I didn't say hotel security. We are checking the garage immediately. You told me the car was there. It was parked there. That is not the same sentence. He was right. Evelyn knew it too. Martin pointed at me. He took my keys. I parked your car, I said, and then apparently gave it to somebody. I didn't. Martin laughed once, without humor. Excellent. Then it vanished on its own. Evelyn stepped between us before I could answer. Our security officer is on the way. will verify the vehicle's location, secure the garage records, and contact the Milwaukee Police Department if there has been an unauthorized release. If, Martin said, Evelyn's jaw tightened. When we established the facts, that was hotel language, calm, smooth, and designed to delay liability until liability had a name. Martin checked his watch. I need the medication by 11:30. What medication? Evelyn asked. That isn't your business. It becomes relevant if this is a medical emergency. It isn't yet. The wall clock over the valet desk showed 11:16, 14 minutes. I looked at Evelyn. I can run down and check space 38. No, she said immediately. It'll take 5 minutes. The key is missing. The car may not be. Martin held up his ticket. You said it was there. I parked it there. Then go look. Evelyn glanced toward the lobby. Several guests had begun watching. Not openly. Hotel guests rarely stared openly when they could pretend to check their phones. She lowered her voice. We wait for security. That should have relieved me. It did not. Waiting meant records, statements, management. Somebody reviewing every time my code appeared in the system, including the 2 weeks earlier when I had entered the wrong stall number for a Lexus and delayed a retrieval by 20 minutes. I was already on a final warning for clipping a concrete pillar with a guest's Range Rover in October. The damage had been minor, a scratched mirror cap, but the hotel's insurer had paid more than I earned in 3 months. Evelyn had kept me employed after I agreed to repay part of the deductible through payroll. Losing the job meant losing the apartment. Losing the apartment meant calling my wife. I could already imagine the pause on the phone before she said, Daniel, what happened this time? That fear made the decision for me before I understood I was making one. I probably left the fob in the cup holder, I said. Louis looked at me. I kept talking. I was distracted by the ticket. I locked the car with the door button and forgot the fob inside. That wouldn't explain the cabinet log, Evelyn said. No, but it would explain why the hook is empty. And how did you lock it with the fob inside? Louis asked. Some cars let you. The Audi did not. I knew that. Louis knew it too. He looked at me differently after that. Not like he thought I was guilty. Like he knew I was lying and had not yet decided whether the lie was meant to protect him. Evelyn said, Nobody is going to the garage without security. The officer arrived less than a minute later. Maren Holt, 38, female, was the Halcyon's overnight security supervisor, a former county corrections officer with close cropped brown hair and a habit of standing slightly sideways when she spoke to people. She wore a navy uniform sweater, black cargo pants, and a radio clipped high on her shoulder. Evelyn explained the missing fob, duplicate ticket, and unauthorized retrieval record. Maren did not interrupt. When Evelyn finished, she looked at me. You physically saw the car in space 38. Yes. What time? Around 10:50. You locked it. Yes. With what? I hesitated. The fob. Louis shifted his weight. Maren noticed. What? She asked him. Louis looked at me once before answering. Daniel just said he might have left it inside. I might have. Maren's eyes stayed on me. Which is it? I don't know. I was moving fast. That was the moment the situation became personal in a way it had not been before. A missing car was a procedural problem. A valet giving inconsistent answers was a suspect. Marin reached for her radio. A sharp electronic tone sounded from the security panel beneath the concierge desk. 3 beeps. Pause. 3 more. Marin turned toward it. The display flashed amber. Garage B2, co-sensor 2. High reading. Lewis read it over her shoulder. Carbon monoxide. Marin keyed her radio. Control, confirm alarm at Mason Garage. Static answered, followed by a man's voice. Confirmed. B2 East sensor reading 86 parts per million and climbing. Ventilation fan fault showing on panel. Marin looked at the clock. 11:19. Close garage access, she said into the radio. No entries. Notify building engineering and fire department. Martin stepped closer. My medication is in that car. Nobody enters until the air is cleared, Marin said. You don't understand. I understand exactly. Carbon monoxide can put you on the floor before you realize you're impaired. I need a case from the trunk. What's in it? Martin pressed his lips together. Marin waited. Insulin, he said, and other medication. Evelyn stared at him. You left insulin in a freezing car. It's in an insulated travel case. How long can you safely wait? Marin asked. I can wait. My wife cannot. The lobby seemed to narrow around that sentence. Where is she? Evelyn asked. Upstairs, room 1214. Is she conscious? She's sleeping. Does she know the medication is in the vehicle? Martin looked toward the elevators. No. Marin lifted her radio again. Evelyn, have front desk call the room and send someone up. If his wife is in immediate need, we call EMS. Martin caught her wrist. It was not violent, not exactly, but it was fast. Marin looked down at his hand. He released her. I don't want an ambulance, he said. That is no longer your decision if she is in danger. She's not in danger yet. She needs the medication before midnight. That gives us 40 minutes, Evelyn said. No, it gives us less than that. Why? Martin looked at the people watching from the lobby and lowered his voice. Because she thinks I already brought it upstairs. There it was, a private mistake, the kind that made people reckless. Marin radioed for a medical check on room 1214, then took a portable gas detector from the security office. It was a yellow handheld unit with a black rubber casing and a digital screen. I'm going to the garage entrance, she said. Not B2, the entrance. I'll check the air at street level and meet fire personnel. I'm coming, Martin said. No, my wife's medication is not worth adding you to the patient list. I'll go, I said. Everyone looked at me. I heard myself continue. I know the layout. I know where the car is. If the reading is safe near the ramp, I can get down and bring it up. Marin shook her head. That is not how carbon monoxide works. The garage has stairwells, which can trap gas. We'll wear respirators. Those masks in the utility cabinet are particulate filters. They do nothing for carbon monoxide. Lewis said, fire department will be here soon. Marin glanced toward the street-facing windows. On a Thursday night downtown, maybe, but they still have to assess before entry. Martin checked his watch again. 11:22. The radio on Marin's shoulder cracked. Security, medical check room 1214. No answer by phone or door. We can hear television inside. Martin's face changed. Not dramatically. His lower jaw loosened. Open the room, he said. Engineering is bringing the master key, the radio voice replied. Marin pointed at Evelyn. Go upstairs. Evelyn left at once, with Martin following despite her telling him not to. Marin turned to Louis and me. You two stay here. Then the valet intercom buzzed. Louis pressed the button. A man's voice came through, distorted by static. Valet, I'm in the garage. Louis looked at the screen. The call indicator showed the emergency phone on B3. Marin took the handset. This is hotel security. Identify yourself. My car won't start. Sir, the garage is being evacuated due to a carbon monoxide alarm. Walk to the nearest marked stairwell immediately. I can't. Are you injured? A pause, then. I don't think this is my car. The connection popped. Marin leaned toward the speaker. Sir, I used the ticket. Your guy brought it down. What is your name? Another pause. Howard. Howard what? The line went quiet. Louis tapped the call button. Nothing. Marin radioed control. Do we have an active valet on B3? The answer came quickly. Negative. Garage gate was closed on alarm. Camera feed is down. Why is the feed down? Same electrical fault as the ventilation panel, maybe. That word had begun doing too much work. Marin clipped the gas detector to her belt. I'm going to the B1 landing only, she said. I'll check the stairwell and establish voice contact. I'm coming, I said again. No. I know which cars were parked where. Daniel. If someone used a claim ticket and got the wrong car, this is tied to our system. That doesn't make you rescue personnel. No, it makes me the reason he might be down there. The words came out before I could soften them. Louis looked at me. Marin studied my face for a second, then handed me a small flashlight. B1 landing, she said. You do not go lower unless the meter stays under 35, and I say so. The second it alarms, we turn around. Louis stepped forward. I'm going too. No, he knows the garage, I said. So do I, Louis said. And if Daniel passes out, you can't drag him alone. Marin swore under her breath. The three of us went out through the service corridor and into the alley. The cold hit hard after the lobby heat. The refrigeration unit rattled above the restaurant door. Snowmelt ran black along the curb. At the garage entrance, the steel gate was halfway down and had stopped crooked, leaving a gap of about 4 feet beneath it. Marin checked the gas detector. The screen read 9 parts per million. Stay close, she said. We ducked under the gate. The garage air smelled different from before. Hot metal, exhaust, something electrical, like dust burning inside an old heater. The overhead lights on B1 flickered but held. A mechanical alarm pulsed somewhere below us, not loud, just a repeated electronic chirp that seemed to travel through the concrete. Marin held the detector in front of her. 14. 18. At the stairwell door, it climbed to 23. Howard, she shouted. Her voice bounced down the concrete shaft. For several seconds, nothing answered. Then, faintly from below, help not through the intercom, through the stairwell. Marin opened the door. The detector jumped to 31. Borderline, she said. We go down 1 landing, no farther. We descended toward B2. Halfway down, the alarm on the detector began chirping. 36. Then 41. Marin stopped. Back up. Below us, a car horn sounded. 1 long blast, then another. Louis leaned over the rail. Howard, the horn stopped. A voice called up, too distorted by the concrete to make out the words. Marin grabbed my jacket as I moved down another step. I said back, He's right there, and the reading is 46. A pair of headlights swept across the wall below, slowly. A vehicle was moving on B2. Marin shut off her flashlight. We stood on the stairs, listening. Tires hissed across wet concrete. An engine climbed the ramp beneath us. The gas detector chirped faster. A dark sedan appeared through the stairwell's narrow, wired glass window and passed across the B2 level. Gray, Audi-shaped. Louis pressed his face closer to the glass. Is that 186? The sedan slowed. For 1 second, its driver turned toward the stairwell. I could not make out the face through the reflected garage lights, but the driver was not Martin Voss, and it was not the man in the green sweatshirt. The Audi accelerated up the ramp. Marin shoved open the stairwell door. Stop. The vehicle disappeared toward B1. A second horn sounded below us. Not the Audi, another car. Howard was still down there. The gas detector flashed 58. Above, metal groaned as the damaged garage gate began descending again. Louis looked up the stairs. Daniel, the opening to the alley was closing. Marin grabbed her radio. Control, override the Mason gate now. Only static came back. The steel gate struck the pavement with a heavy, final bang. We were inside the garage. The Audi was somewhere above us. A stranded man was somewhere below. And the carbon monoxide reading kept rising. The gate closing changed the sound of the garage. Before, the alley had leaked in around the edges, truck brakes, distant horns, the refrigeration unit rattling above the restaurant. Once the steel curtain hit the pavement, all of that vanished. Remained was contained sound, engines echoing between concrete slabs, the carbon monoxide detector chirping at Marin's belt, water dripping through pipes, and somebody below us pressing a car horn in bursts that were getting shorter. Marin pulled us back into the stairwell and shut the fire door. The detector dropped from 58 to 46, then hovered there. Up, she said. We get to B1 and find another exit. What about Howard? Louis asked. We do not help him by passing out. The garage had 3 pedestrian routes. The east stairwell, where we stood, connected B3 to the street-level office lobby beside the main vehicle gate. The west stairwell opened onto Mason Street near the freight entrance. A central elevator served all parking levels, but required a building access badge after 8:00 p.m. The Audi was somewhere above us on B1. Howard was somewhere below on B3. The west stairwell was on the far side of the garage, almost a full block away through B2. Marin pointed upward. Move, we climbed. By the time we reached the B1 landing, my thighs were shaking harder than they should have been. I had been running cars for 5 hours in freezing air, living on vending machine coffee and half a granola bar. Every breath felt a little too deliberate. Marin checked the detector through the wired glass window before opening the door. 32. Lower here, she said. Stay against the outer wall. The ramp is probably collecting exhaust. B1 was brighter than B2, with white LED fixtures instead of old fluorescent tubes. The level held monthly office tenants, cleaner cars, assigned spaces, charging stations along the north wall. The vehicle ramp curved upward on our right toward the closed gate. The central elevator lobby sat roughly 50 yards ahead. The west stairwell was beyond it, near the opposite corner. The gray Audi was not on the ramp. We moved along the perimeter. Marin kept the detector held chest high. Lewis walked behind her. I took the rear and kept looking back, expecting headlights to rise from B2. At the central elevator lobby, Marin hit the call button. Nothing. She pressed it again. The digital display was dark. Power fault, Lewis said, or shut down with the ventilation system. Beside the elevator was an emergency phone. Marin lifted it. No dial tone. She tried her radio. Control, this is Holt. We're on B1 near the central elevator. Gate is closed. Radio reception is poor. Confirm west stair exit. Static. Then one broken word. Fire. Marin moved closer to the elevator doors and tried again. Repeat. Nothing. Lewis pointed toward the ceiling. There's a signal repeater in the west stairwell. How do you know? I helped maintenance move boxes last month. The detector rose to 37. Marin turned toward the far side of B1. We cross here, take the west stairs, get outside, and direct fire crews to Howard. It was the first plan. It lasted less than a minute. We had gone maybe 20 yards when headlights appeared at the top of the ramp behind us. Lewis grabbed my arm. The engine revved hard. A vehicle came up from B2 too fast, tires squealing against the painted curve. Its headlights swept over the ceiling, then dropped directly onto us. Behind the pillars, Marin shouted. We scattered. I hit the concrete shoulder first and slid behind a support column. Lewis ducked between two parked SUVs. Marin drew the expandable baton from her belt, which would have been useless against a moving car, but probably felt better than empty hands. The vehicle accelerated across B1. For 1 second, all I saw was a dark hood and white headlights. Then the driver slammed the brakes. Rubber squealed. The rear fishtailed. The car stopped sideways 10 feet from the elevator lobby. A horn blared continuously. Lewis shouted, "Don't move." The driver's door flew open. A man stumbled out wearing only one shoe. He made it 3 steps before collapsing to his hands and knees. It was not the Audi. It was a black Honda Accord with a dented rear door. Marin ran to him, crouching low. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man coughed and retched onto the concrete. For several seconds, none of us approached because of the way he had driven at us. That was the terrifying part. The explanation came quickly and made it worse in a different way. He had not been trying to hit us. He had been half conscious. His name was Howard Bell, 41 male, an insurance claims adjuster from Madison staying at the Halcyon for a training conference. His skin had a gray, damp look, and his eyes struggled to focus on Marin's face. "They brought me the wrong car," he said. Marin checked the detector near his head. 41. "We need to move you to the stairwell." Howard shook his head and pointed toward the Honda. "My phone." Lewis opened the passenger door and found it on the floor. There was also a Halcyon Valet ticket on the center console, number 205. I recognized the handwriting. "Louis S. What car did you check in?" I asked. Howard stared at me as if the question were difficult. "Volvo, blue, Wisconsin plates." The Honda had Illinois plates. "Who brought this down to you?" "One of you." "Which one?" He looked from me to Lewis. "Not you." "Describe him." Howard swallowed. "Red jacket, hotel logo, Our valet jackets were black. Marin and Louis exchanged a look. "Did he give you the keys by hand?" Marin asked. "No, car was running. He said the ticket printer was down." "Where did this happen?" "Hotel Lane." That meant Howard had left the hotel in a car that was not his, driven somewhere, then somehow returned to the garage. "How did you get back in here?" I asked. "I followed the signs." "What signs?" He pressed the heels of his hands against his temples. "I don't know. I was trying to get back to the hotel. The navigation kept taking me to Mason." Louis checked the dashboard. The Honda's built-in map displayed a route ending at the garage entrance. That was possible. The Halcyon listed the Mason Street garage as its vehicle entrance online. Howard had likely driven several blocks before realizing the car was wrong, then returned through the open gate before the carbon monoxide alarm closed it. "How long were you down on B3?" Marin asked. "I parked, I called. Then I felt sick." "You left the engine running." Howard looked toward the Honda. The engine was still running. Marin swore, reached through the open door, and shut it off. The detector dropped by 2 points almost immediately. The Honda had contributed to the gas buildup, though it could not explain the failed fans or the moving Audi. Dragged Howard into the central elevator vestibule, where a fire-rated door separated the small tiled area from the garage. The air inside read 26. He could walk with help, but kept losing his balance. Attempt 1, reaching the west stairs, had failed because we now had a patient who could not cross B1 quickly. It also gave us a new fact. Someone wearing a false valet jacket had handed out the wrong vehicle while its engine was already running. Marin tried the emergency phone again. Still dead. She pressed her radio against the elevator door. "Control, medical emergency on B1. 1 adult male, probable carbon monoxide exposure. We need west stair access or gate override." Static answered. Then Evelyn's voice broke through in fragments. "Wife conscious, blood sugar ambulance. Martin's wife had been found, but I could not tell whether she was stable." Marin tried to reply. The radio failed. Howard gripped my sleeve. "My Volvo's still here." "I don't know. My work bag is inside." "Forget the bag. My keys. My house keys are attached." His breathing quickened. Marin took his face in both hands and forced him to look at her. "You are going to breathe slowly, in through your nose, out through your mouth. You are not trapped in the car. You are not alone." Howard nodded, then immediately looked past her. "Who's that?" We all turned. A figure stood beyond the glass door at the edge of the garage. Red jacket, dark pants, head lowered. For 1 second, nobody moved. Figure lifted one arm and struck the glass. Once, twice. Louis backed against the elevator. Marin raised her baton. The third strike shattered the upper pane. The sound cracked across the tiled vestibule. A red sleeve reached through the opening. Marin shouted, "Show me your hands." The figure shoved something through the broken glass. A metal tool hit the floor. Then a face appeared at the opening. Not an attacker, a firefighter. The red we had seen was a reflective rescue coat distorted by the tinted safety glass. "Hotel security," he shouted. Marin lowered the baton. "Yes, main gate mechanism jammed. We're coming through the west stairwell. How many with you?" 4. 1 symptomatic male. Carbon monoxide readings in the 40s on B1 and higher below. The firefighter, Brendan Cole, 34, male, wore a Milwaukee Fire Department helmet and a breathing apparatus mask hanging loose against his chest. He had reached us from the west side, but could not open the vestibule because the electronic lock had failed. The metal object he had pushed through was a compact glass breaking hammer. "Stand back," he said. He cleared the rest of the pane, reached through, and released the mechanical latch. Fresh air did not rush in. The west stairwell itself smelled stale and metallic, but his detector showed 12 parts per million. "Can you take Howard?" Marin asked. Brendan looked him over. "Yeah. Partners 1 flight up with oxygen." Our second plan formed. Send Howard out with the fire crew, then follow. It almost worked. Brendan and Lewis supported Howard through the doorway. Marin went behind them. I stepped out last. The west stairwell climbed from B1 to a street exit at ground level. It also descended to B2 and B3. The walls were painted gray. Emergency lights glowed at each landing. We reached the first flight. Above us, another firefighter appeared carrying a medical bag. Then the building shook. Not hard enough to knock us down, hard enough to send dust from the stairwell joints. A deep impact sounded from the garage side of the wall, metal against concrete. The lights blinked out. Howard screamed. Emergency lamps switched on 2 seconds later, bathing the stairs in dim yellow. Brendan keyed his radio. "What was that?" A voice answered from above. "Vehicle collision at west exit. Door blocked." He looked up. "Blocked how?" "Car hit the exterior bollard and pushed the frame." We continued upward to see for ourselves. At street level, the steel fire door had bowed inward. Through its narrow window, red emergency lights flashed on Mason Street, but the door would only open 3 inches before striking twisted metal outside. A car had crashed directly against the exit. From the fragment visible through the window, I could see gray paint. Lewis leaned close. "Is that the Audi?" The scrape above the rear passenger wheel was visible through the glass. It was. The Audi had reached the street somehow, circled the block, and struck the west stairwell exit from outside. Brendan's partner tried forcing the door with a Halligan bar. The frame held. "Use the upper building exit," Marin said. "There isn't one," Brendan replied. "This stair terminates here." "What about cutting the car away?" "Engine company's working on it. But the driver's door is locked and the vehicle is in gear against the bollard." "Is the driver inside?" Brendan looked through the window. "Yes, alive. Can't tell." Howard sagged between Lewis and the second firefighter. Brendan fitted an oxygen mask over his face. Marin pointed down the stairs. We returned to B1 and crossed to the east stairwell. "The readings are climbing," I said. "We don't have a better route." Her detector chirped from her belt. 27 in the stairwell now. Gas was spreading through the fire doors each time they opened. Lewis looked through the damaged exit window at the Audi. "Medication S in the trunk," Martin's wife. "Room 1214, possibly waiting on insulin." Marin's radio finally caught a clean transmission from Evelyn. "Marin, EMS is with Mrs. Voss. Blood glucose is dropping. Martin says her glucagon kit is also in the vehicle. Paramedics have supplies, but he is refusing transport and interfering." Tell him the Audi is outside the west exit, Marin replied. A pause. What? It crashed against the stairwell door. Another pause, longer. Then Evelyn said, Martin is no longer in the room. Marin closed her eyes. Where did he go? We don't know, the firefighter above us shouted. Movement in the vehicle. We turned toward the exit. The Audi's brake lights came on. The engine revved. The car backed away just enough for the steel door to flex outward. Brendan reached for the handle. Wait, Marin said. The Audi accelerated forward again. It hit the bollard and door with another deep crash. The frame twisted farther inward. The narrow glass pane burst, spraying fragments into the stairwell. A piece cut across Lewis's cheek. He jerked back, one hand to his face. Blood ran between his fingers. The Audi reversed again. Through the open window, I saw the driver clearly for the first time. A man in a red valet jacket. He turned his head toward us. His face was covered by a white paper mask, the kind painters wore for dust. Not protection from carbon monoxide, just enough to hide his features. He raised one gloved hand. In it was a black key fob. Then he drove away. For half a second, the street exit stood partially clear. Brendan shoved the door. It opened 8 inches, not enough for Howard on the oxygen mask, maybe enough for one person sideways. The concrete frame groaned. Don't force it, his partner warned. Headers cracked. Jagged line had opened above the door. Brendan stepped back. Outside, fire crews moved toward us, but the damaged bollard and collapsed frame blocked the opening. We can stabilize it from the street, someone shouted. Do not use that exit. Attempt 2 had failed. Howard was alive and receiving oxygen, but our safest stairwell was structurally compromised. Lewis was bleeding, and the Audi had escaped with the medication still inside. Marin pressed gauze from the medical bag against Lewis's cheek. The cut was long but shallow. You dizzy? No, nauseous. I was before getting hit with a window. His voice shook despite the joke. Brendan's detector sounded 35. Everybody down to B1, he ordered. Now we descended. At the B1 landing, smoke drifted beneath the garage door. Not thick, but visible. Gray threads curling along the floor. That's not exhaust, Brendan said. He opened the door 2 inches and sniffed. Electrical fire. From somewhere near the central elevator, an alarm began ringing. The Honda's dashboard, I thought. Charging station. Ventilation motor. Then orange light flickered across the parked cars. A charging unit on the north wall had caught fire after the power fault. Flames climbed the cable into the plastic housing directly between us and the east stairwell. The west exit was unusable. The east route was cut off by fire. B2 and B3 remained below us. Brendan keyed his radio. Interior team trapped West Stair B1 with 4 civilians and hotel security. Fire blocking east side egress. Request suppression through vehicle entrance. The answer came through clearly. Negative access. Main gate motor has overheated. Smoke pushing from ramp. Stand by. Stand by. The words settled badly. Marin looked through the garage window toward the flames, then down the stairwell. There's a service tunnel on B3, I said. Everyone turned to me. Lewis's hand remained pressed to his cheek. What tunnel? Marin asked. Maintenance corridor. It runs beneath the alley to the hotel basement. Laundry carts use it when the street loading door is blocked. Does it open from the garage side? With a staff badge. You have one. I touched my pocket. My valet badge was still clipped inside my jacket. Marin stared down toward B2. Her detector showed 39. How far? From the west stairs, across B2, down the south ramp to B3, then behind the reserved fleet spaces. Maybe 200 yards. Through higher carbon monoxide. Yes, Brendan looked at Howard, who was breathing through oxygen, but still unable to stand without help. We have 10 minutes on this cylinder at the current flow. The fire alarm grew louder. Sprinklers activated somewhere beyond the wall with a heavy rushing sound. Water would help the flames. It would also mix with oil, ash, and electrical debris across the garage floor. Marin looked at the blocked street exit, then at the smoke thickening behind the B1 door. There was no safe retreat left, only down. She tightened the strap on Howard's oxygen mask. Daniel leads, she said. Holt behind him. Firefighter with patient in the middle. Lewis stays with me. Brendan opened the B1 door. Smoke rolled into the stairwell. The detector climbed to 44. We turned away from the street and started descending toward B2, then B3, committing ourselves to the deepest part of the garage because every route above us had closed. Halfway down the first flight, the lights failed again. This time, the emergency lamps did not come back on. Darkness in a parking garage is not complete. Dash clocks glow through windshields. Exit signs bleed red along the ceiling. Charging stations blink error codes. Somewhere above us, the electrical fire threw a dull orange pulse down the ramp, bright enough to make the concrete breathe. Brendan switched on his helmet lamp. The second firefighter did the same. Their names and reflective stripes appeared in fragments. Howard's oxygen mask, Lewis's bloody hand, Marin's detector flashing 47. Single file, Brendan said. Low pace. Nobody runs. The west stairwell opened onto B2 near the northwest corner. The service tunnel was one level below us, at the southeast corner of B3. To reach it, we had to cross B2 eastward, descend the south vehicle ramp, then pass the reserved fleet spaces and a locked maintenance door. Nearly the full length of the garage. Marin put one hand on my shoulder. You know the route? Yes. Then talk us through it. I pushed through the fire door. B2 smelled like exhaust and wet concrete. Sprinkler water from above had begun running down the ramp in thin streams, carrying black grit across the painted lanes. The portable detector climbed. 52, 56. Brendan adjusted Howard's oxygen flow. Keep moving. We stayed along the outer wall where the readings were lower. Every 20 feet, I called out the next landmark. Blue pillar, pay station. Speed bump. My flashlight found space 38. Empty. The gray Audi was gone, but the pine tree air freshener lay on the floor near the wheel stop. I stopped. Daniel, Marin said. I picked it up. The green cardboard tree was wet and bent through the middle. On its string was a thin strip of black plastic, not part of the air freshener. A zip tie, cut cleanly. What? Lewis asked. Nothing. It was not nothing. The Audi's rear view mirror had been used to secure something. A key pouch, maybe. A tracking device. Something removed quickly. The detector chirped faster. Marin pushed me forward. We reached the central cross lane. A shape moved between parked cars on our right. Lewis saw it first. Someone's there. Brendan swung his light. A person ducked behind a white delivery van. Marin raised her baton. Hotel security. Come out with your hands visible. No response. Howard made a low sound behind his mask. The shape appeared again near the van's rear bumper. Small, fast. It came toward us. Lewis backed up so quickly he struck a pillar. The thing ran into Brendan's light. A raccoon. Its fur was soaked flat to its body. It skidded on the wet floor, changed direction, and vanished beneath a parked pickup. Nobody laughed. The explanation lasted 1 second. Then an engine started on B3. The sound rose through the ramp ahead. Not one engine. 2. Move, Marin said. We crossed the last stretch of B2 and reached the south ramp. It curved down clockwise, wide enough for 2 cars, with a concrete divider in the center. The red exit arrows pointed up, away from where we were going. The carbon monoxide reading hit 64. Brendan looked at Howard. We have maybe 4 minutes on the cylinder. Howard's knees buckled. The second firefighter caught him. I can walk, Howard said. He could not. They hooked his arms over their shoulders and carried most of his weight between them. Halfway down the ramp, headlights appeared below. A blue Volvo climbed toward us. Howard lifted his head. That's mine. The car stopped across both lanes. Its engine idled. The driver's door opened. Martin Voss stepped out. His navy overcoat was gone. His white shirt clung wetly to his stomach, and his hair had come loose over his forehead. In one hand, he held a tire iron. In the other, a hotel master access card. Move away from the car, Marin said. Martin looked past her at Howard. You're supposed to be outside. Howard blinked through the oxygen mask. You gave me the Honda. Martin's face changed. Not guilt, annoyance. You were supposed to drive it to the airport. I was going home. You said airport. I never talked to you. Martin looked at me, then at the firefighters. The plan, whatever it had been, had broken in more places than he could manage. Marin stepped forward, put the tire iron down. Martin backed toward the Volvo. You don't understand what's happening. Then explain it. The Audi was already marked. Marked for what? He glanced up the ramp. An engine revved behind us on B2. The masked man in the red valet jacket appeared at the top of the slope, driving the black Honda. He stopped sideways across the ramp. We were boxed in. Martin smiled without humor. That, he said, is why you should have stayed upstairs. The man in red got out. Up close, the jacket was not ours. The logo had been ironed onto the chest, slightly crooked. He wore black nitrile gloves and the same white dust mask. He held a short pry bar. Marin faced him. Remove the mask. He did not. Martin said, Cal, this got out of hand. Calvin Rusk, 39 male, had once worked for the parking contractor that serviced the Halcyon before our current company took over. I knew his face when he pulled the mask down. Narrow cheeks, broken capillary lines around the nose. I had seen his photograph on an old employee bulletin in the valet office, though I had never met him. Former employees, access codes were supposed to be deleted. Supposed to be. Calvin looked at me. "You're Mercer." I said nothing. "You make it easy." Same 4 digits everywhere. My code. My phone PIN had once been 4722. Lewis had seen me unlock it during breaks. Other valets probably had. I had never considered that anybody watched. Marin said, "Both of you put the tools down." Calvin looked at Martin. "Where's the laptop?" "In the Audi. You said you had it." "I said I could get it." "Where's the Audi?" Martin did not answer. Calvin's expression hardened. The scheme came together in pieces. Martin had not been a random victim. He had arranged to hand off his own company car without formally releasing it, creating a theft that could be blamed on the hotel. The duplicate ticket gave him a clean story. Calvin used copied employee codes and an old contractor badge to move keys through the cabinet, then switched cars among guests so nobody could establish who had driven what. The different drivers were camouflage. Every wrong car created another confused witness, another license plate in the wrong place, another hour before the police understood which vehicle mattered. Howard had been directed toward the airport in the Honda because someone expected him to carry it away from the hotel. The Audi contained the real target, Martin's company laptop. Maybe something on it worth more than the car. Lewis said, "You poisoned the garage for a laptop." Calvin looked at the ceiling. "I killed the fans. The sensor alarm was supposed to clear the place." "You could have killed him," Lewis said, pointing at Howard. "He left the engine running." Howard tried to pull away from the firefighters. "You put me in that car." "Enough," Marin said. Her voice cut through all of us. "Tools on the ground. Now." Calvin gripped the pry bar tighter. Martin lifted the tire iron. Brendan moved Howard behind the concrete divider. The second firefighter began dragging the oxygen cylinder with them. Calvin said, "The tunnel door, open it." "No," Marin replied. "Open it and everybody walks out. You first." He looked at me. "Your badge." I had spent the whole night trying to keep responsibility at arm's length. Rename the problem, shrink it, make it somebody else's procedure. There was nowhere left to put it. I unclipped the badge. Martin exhaled with relief. Marin turned her head slightly. "Daniel." I threw the badge over the divider, not toward Calvin, down the ramp. It struck the floor, skittered beneath the Volvo, and disappeared behind the front wheel. Calvin swore and lunged. Marin hit him with the baton across the forearm. The pry bar dropped. Martin swung the tire iron at her. Lewis stepped between them. The iron caught him high on the shoulder with a thick, ugly impact. Lewis went down. Marin drove the baton into Martin's thigh. He collapsed against the Volvo, but Calvin had already reached beneath the front bumper for my badge. I ran at him. It was not bravery. There was no clean thought behind it. I hit him around the waist, and both of us went onto the wet concrete. My chin struck the floor. Light burst across my vision. Calvin rolled on top of me and pressed his forearm against my throat. He smelled like sweat and cigarette smoke. The Audi had smelled the same. He punched me once in the side of the head, then again. I grabbed the first thing my hand found. The bent pine tree air freshener, still in my pocket, was useless. The cut zip tie attached to it was not. I looped it around 2 fingers and drove the stiff end into the back of his gloved hand. Calvin jerked away. I rolled toward the Volvo. My badge lay just beyond the front tire. Martin climbed into the driver's seat. The engine revved. "Move," Marin shouted. I reached for the badge. The Volvo lurched forward. The tire crossed my left hand. There was pressure first, then a brittle sequence of cracks I felt through my wrist. I screamed and pulled back. The badge remained under the car. Martin drove down the ramp toward B3. Calvin scrambled after him. Brendan tackled Calvin from behind before he reached the passenger door. They hit the divider. Calvin's head struck concrete, and he went limp. The Volvo continued down alone. Marin dropped beside me. My glove had split across the knuckles. 2 fingers bent in directions they should not have. "Don't look," she said. I looked. The pain arrived all at once. It hollowed out the garage. Lewis was sitting against the wall, one arm hanging low. His shoulder had begun swelling beneath his jacket. Howard's oxygen cylinder gave a warning hiss. Brendan checked Calvin's pulse. Alive, unconscious. Marin keyed her radio. "Nothing." "Tunnel," I said. She looked at my hand. "The badge is gone. Spare release." "What?" "Maintenance door has a fire pole behind the fleet cabinet." "Where?" "B3, south wall." We had no time to debate. Brendan and the second firefighter secured Calvin's wrists with a restraint strap and left him in the recovery position above the worst exhaust layer. Marin and Brendan supported Howard. The second firefighter helped Lewis stand. I held my crushed hand against my chest and led with the flashlight in my right. We descended. B3 was the worst air yet. The detector flashed 78. Visibility remained clear, but each breath tasted metallic. The Volvo sat 50 yards ahead beside the reserved fleet spaces, driver's door open. Martin was gone. The service corridor lay beyond 3 black SUVs used by the hotel's executive transport company. Along the south wall stood a gray metal cabinet marked fire equipment. We reached it. Locked. I tried my badge from instinct before remembering it lay beneath the Volvo's tire. "Pull handle behind it," I said. Marin yanked the cabinet door. "Nothing. It's bolted. Side panel." Brendan wedged Calvin's dropped pry bar into the seam and leaned. Metal screamed. The panel opened 2 inches. Behind it was a red mechanical lever. Before he could pull it, a fire extinguisher struck the back of his helmet. Brendan dropped to one knee. Martin stood behind us, holding the extinguisher by its handle. His face was slick with sweat. "You don't open that door," he said. Marin moved toward him. Martin raised the extinguisher. "The tunnel has cameras. So does the hotel," she said. "Not tonight." He had caused the electrical failure too, not Calvin alone. Martin backed toward the Volvo. "I just need the laptop." "You left your wife upstairs without medication," I said. He looked at me. She was never in danger. Her blood sugar was dropping. She had supplies. You told us she didn't. I needed everyone focused on the car. Even Calvin had believed the medication mattered. Martin had used his wife's condition to turn staff into retrieval workers. The insulated case was bait. Marin said, "Where is the Audi?" Martin's breathing became ragged. Cal lost it. To whom? The buyer. A third person. The younger man in the green sweatshirt. He had not been picking anyone up. He had been checking the Audi's condition before the handoff. Martin lifted the extinguisher again. Marin stepped left. I saw what she was doing and moved right. Martin tracked her. I swung my flashlight at the Volvo's windshield. It shattered the edge of the glass with a sharp crack. Martin flinched. Marin drove into him low. They hit the floor. The extinguisher rolled beneath the SUV. Martin grabbed her throat. I kicked him in the ribs. Pain tore through my broken hand as I lost balance and fell. Louis appeared beside us, pale and bent around his injured shoulder. He kicked the extinguisher's loose hose toward Brendan. Brendan grabbed it, pulled the safety pin, and discharged it into Martin's face. White chemical powder burst across the floor. Martin released Marin, choking and clawing at his eyes. She rolled him onto his stomach and cuffed him. "Pull the lever," she shouted. Brendan reached into the cabinet. The red handle came down. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then locks clacked inside the wall. A steel door beside the fleet spaces opened half an inch. Cold air moved through the gap. Real air, laundry detergent, boiler heat, the hotel basement. We dragged it open. The tunnel beyond was narrow, tiled, and lit by emergency strips along the floor. The detector fell from 78 to 30. Then 22. Howard's oxygen ran out as we crossed the threshold. The cylinder gave one final hiss. He collapsed before the interior fire door. Brendan and his partner carried him the last 20 yards. Louis walked until we reached the laundry room, then sat down between 2 industrial dryers and did not get back up. Marin pushed Martin ahead of her in cuffs. I followed, holding my left hand against my chest, leaving drops of blood on the white tile. Behind us, Calvin remained unconscious on the ramp. Fire crews reached him through the garage 6 minutes later after cutting the main gate. He survived. So did Howard. So did Martin's wife. The Audi was recovered before dawn in a surface lot near General Mitchell International Airport. The younger man in the green sweatshirt had abandoned it after police shut down exits around the terminal garages. The medication case was still in the trunk. The company laptop was not. That was the cost Martin had been willing to make everyone else pay. By the time paramedics put me on a stretcher, I could hear the hotel lobby through the basement doors. Phones ringing, guests complaining, Evelyn giving instructions in the same controlled voice she used for everything. Normal sounds. Almost. Louis lay on the stretcher beside mine with a fractured collarbone and 12 stitches in his cheek. Howard was being treated for carbon monoxide poisoning. Brendan had a concussion. Calvin had a skull fracture. Martin was in police custody with chemical burns around his eyes. My left index and middle fingers were crushed beyond repair. The surgeon would remove them the next morning. As the ambulance doors closed, Evelyn appeared beside me. "You did leave the key in the car?" she asked. Even then, she needed the records straight. "No," I said. It was the first clean answer I had given all night. I lied. She nodded once. Then the doors shut between us. The surgeon told me about the fingers at 6:20 the next morning. He said it in a small consultation room with a wall-mounted television showing a silent weather report. Snow moved across the radar in green and blue bands. The volume was off, but captions crawled along the bottom of the screen warning about untreated roads north of the city. My left hand was wrapped from the wrist to the fingertips in white gauze and held above my chest in a foam cradle. It looked oversized and temporary, like a prop somebody had forgotten to finish. The surgeon's name was Dr. Neil Carver, 58, male, an orthopedic hand specialist with rectangular glasses, and a voice that never rose or fell much. He explained that the index and middle fingers had suffered crush damage beyond what reconstruction could reliably repair. Too many fractures, too much vascular damage, tissue already losing blood supply. He did not use the word amputate until I made him. You're taking them off to the lowest viable level, he said. We'll preserve as much length as possible. My wife, Rachel, sat beside the bed. Rachel Mercer, 29, female, worked as a paralegal at a firm in Wauwatosa and had not been my wife in any useful sense for nearly 4 months, though neither of us had filed anything yet. She had arrived wearing black leggings, snow boots, and the gray wool coat she used for funerals and court dates. Her hair was tied back badly, as if she had done it in the car. She reached toward my right hand, stopped halfway, then rested her palm on the mattress instead. What happens if he waits? She asked. Dr. Carver answered her rather than me. Infection risk increases. He may lose more tissue. Rachel nodded. I stared at the muted weather map. Do it, I said. That was the entire decision. No speech, no bargaining. By 8:00, I was being wheeled toward surgery. The hallway lights passed above me one at a time. White panel, ceiling vent, white panel, exit sign. I remember the rubber squeak of the transport bed and the smell of coffee from a nurse's station. Normal hospital sounds. The kind people forget until they hear them again years later. Louis was 2 floors below me. His collarbone had fractured near the shoulder, but the bone had not displaced far enough to require surgery. He wore a sling and had 12 black stitches running from the corner of his cheek toward his ear. When I saw him later that afternoon, he was sitting upright in a hospital chair, watching a basketball game with the sound off. You look terrible, he said. Talking pulled at the stitches, so he spoke from one side of his mouth. You too. He looked at the dressing where my fingers had been. His eyes moved away quickly. They tell you I saved everybody, he asked. No, hospital records are unreliable. I laughed once and regretted it. The pain medication had dulled my hand to a heavy electrical throbbing, but laughing pulled at the bruises in my ribs where Calvin had hit me. Louis lifted a cup with his uninjured arm. They arrested Martin. I heard, and the other guy, Calvin S. under guard. Good. He took a drink. The game continued silently behind him. After a while, he said, You really thought leaving the key in the car sounded better. I looked at the window. Snow was beginning to stick to the ledge. I thought it sounded smaller. Louis nodded as if that made sense. For me, it did. That was the problem. The Milwaukee Police Department interviewed me twice in the hospital. The first detective came before surgery and asked questions while I was still on morphine. The second came the next day with a digital recorder and warned me to tell him if I became tired or confused. Detective Aaron Pike, 44 male, worked financial crimes. but had been pulled into the case because the stolen laptop belonged to a medical logistics company based outside Chicago. Martin was a regional compliance director there. The title sounded harmless until Pike explained what Martin could access: shipment routes, vendor payment records, temporary access credentials for refrigerated warehouses, schedules for pharmaceutical deliveries. Controlled substances, I asked. Some, Pike said. He kept his expression neutral. The laptop's drive was encrypted. According to the company, it should have locked automatically once disconnected from its corporate network. Martin claimed the buyer only wanted documents he had copied to an external device. No external device was found in the Audi. That made the missing laptop harder to explain. The younger man in the green sweatshirt was identified through traffic cameras as Owen Slade, 26, male, from Kenosha. He had a record for auto theft and possession of stolen property. Police arrested him 2 days later at a motel near Racine. He admitted driving the Audi to the airport lot. He denied taking the laptop. He said it was already gone when Calvin handed him the car. Calvin said Martin took it. Martin said Calvin did. All three agreed on almost nothing except the general shape of the plan. Martin had approached Calvin months earlier. They knew each other from the old parking contractor. Calvin had been fired after complaints about missing cash from vehicles, though no charges were filed. He still possessed copies of contractor access manuals and had photographed employee code sheets before leaving. The halcyon changed vendors. It did not change every system. That was how Calvin got into the key cabinet logs. He did not need Daniel Mercer's exact code at first. He had access to the programming screen. Once he saw me enter 472 twice in one evening, he used it because a current employee's number would survive a quick audit better than an inactive one. The duplicate tickets were simpler. A box of old claim rolls had been left in a basement storage cage when the previous contractor moved out. Calvin took several. The printed numbers repeated after every 10,000 tickets. So an old 186 looked identical to a current 186, unless you compared the paper stock under bright light. The wet floor mat came from a utility tunnel. Calvin had staged the Audi for several minutes near a leaking pipe on B3, while he removed a small magnetic pouch from beneath the dashboard. His shoes soaked through standing in runoff. Inside the pouch was a flash drive. That was what the zip tie on the air freshener had helped secure. Martin had placed the drive there before arriving at the hotel, then pretended the laptop itself was the target so Calvin would focus on stealing the vehicle and creating an insurance trail. The police recovered the flash drive from Calvin's apartment. It contained copied shipping manifests, warehouse entry times, and partial login information. Not enough to unlock everything. Enough to make the federal investigators interested. The laptop itself was found 11 days later in a trash compactor behind a closed pharmacy in Oak Creek. It had been smashed with a hammer and soaked in cleaning fluid. Forensics recovered little from it. That should have closed the question. Mostly, it did. The prosecution took months. Martin Voss was charged with conspiracy, theft, reckless endangerment, computer-related crimes, and several counts connected to the ventilation shutdown. Alvin faced those charges plus impersonation, unlawful entry, and assault. Owen Slade took a plea deal for his part in moving the Audi and testifying against the other two. Howard Bell spent 2 nights in the hospital. He developed headaches and memory problems that lasted several weeks. He later filed a civil lawsuit against the hotel, the parking contractor, Martin, and almost everyone whose name appeared in the police report. He did not sue Lewis or me individually. I asked my lawyer why. Probably optics, she said. That was not comforting. Martin's wife, Diane Voss, filed for divorce before his preliminary hearing. Her blood sugar had been low, but not immediately fatal. EMS stabilized her in the hotel room, and she was transported after Martin disappeared. She told investigators she had never known anything about the stolen data, the fake vehicle release, or Calvin. I believed her. The audio recording from the room captured her asking Evelyn where her husband had gone. Not angry, confused. That stayed with me more than Martin swinging the tire iron. Evelyn visited me once in the hospital. She brought a card signed by hotel staff and an envelope from Human Resources. My employment was suspended pending investigation. We both knew what that meant. She stood near the foot of the bed in the same dark suit she had worn the night of the incident. The jacket had been cleaned, but there was still a faint white line of fire extinguisher powder along one cuff. I should have called police immediately, she said. It sounded rehearsed, but not false. I should have told you the truth. Yes, she did not soften it. That was Evelyn. The hotel's internal investigation later found that she had followed security policy until the carbon monoxide alarm. But management criticized the delay in contacting police after Martin produced the second ticket. She kept her job. Marin kept hers too, though she took 6 weeks off and began seeing a trauma counselor through the hotel's insurance. The bruising around her throat faded before the photographs from the case stopped circulating among staff. Brendan returned to duty after his concussion cleared. He sent me a message once. You did all right down there. I did not answer for 3 days. Then I wrote, I lied before we went in. His reply came a minute later. People do worse when they're scared. What matters is what they do next. I saved the message. Lewis came back to work before I did. That surprised me until he explained that school tuition did not pause for trauma. He worked the day shift only and refused to enter the Mason Street garage. The hotel temporarily moved valet parking to a newer structure on Jefferson Street, farther away, but better ventilated. For several months, Lewis stood at the curb and handed keys to other drivers. He stopped drinking Monster. He said the smell made him nauseous. My recovery moved in smaller measurements. Stitches out, swelling down, bandage changed. First look at the hand. The first look was worse than the surgery. My index finger ended just past the knuckle. The middle finger ended slightly higher. The scars were pink and tight. My remaining fingers curled inward because the tendons had stiffened while immobilized. The therapist gave me rubber blocks, putty, coins, buttons. Pick this up. Move that. Try again. At night, the missing fingers hurt. not the stumps, the fingers themselves. The index finger burned at the nail, the middle one cramped. I would wake and try to open a hand that no longer existed in the shape my brain remembered. Rachel stayed for the first week, then another. She slept on the couch in my apartment, cooked food I could eat one-handed, and drove me to therapy. We did not pretend the separation had vanished because I was injured. One evening, she placed a stack of unpaid envelopes on the kitchen table. "You still do this," she said. I knew what she meant. I had been home 9 days and had not opened the hotel's insurance forms. "I'll do it tomorrow." "No, you'll make it smaller until it becomes somebody else's emergency." The sentence landed cleanly. I opened them. We did not get back together, but we stopped speaking to each other like every conversation was evidence in a trial. By spring, we filed an uncontested divorce. I signed the papers with my right hand. The halcyon terminated me for falsifying information during a security incident. The parking contractor's workers' compensation insurer covered the surgery, rehabilitation, and part of my lost wages after my lawyer argued that the injury occurred during an emergency response approved by hotel security. The settlement required no admission of fault. Nobody admitted much. I moved out of the apartment before the lease ended and rented a smaller place in West Alleys. For a while, I worked in a call center processing roadside assistance claims. Cars still filled my days, but they arrived as policy numbers and recorded voices. Battery dead, locked keys, flat tire, wrong location. I liked problems that could be entered into boxes. Then, almost a year after the garage, Lewis called me. "Come outside," he said. It was raining. I looked through the window and saw his blue Honda parked at the curb. He was leaning against the hood, his scar pale against his cheek. We drove downtown. The halcyon had reopened the original valet garage after replacing the ventilation controls, access system, cameras, gate motor, emergency phones, and half the electrical panels. The hotel sent notices describing the work as a comprehensive safety modernization. The phrase appeared on a brass sign near the entrance. Lewis parked on Mason Street. Three of us got out at first. The garage gate stood open. White LEDs burned across B1. A new camera pointed toward the ramp. "It looks normal," I said. "Yeah." A valet in a black jacket drove a red BMW through the entrance. Young guy, maybe 19. He held the wheel with one hand and adjusted the radio with the other. We watched the gate lift for him, then lower. Lewis rubbed his injured shoulder. "Still hurts when it rains," he said. "My hand hurts when it doesn't," he smiled. We went into the halcyon through the main doors. The lobby smelled like cedar, coffee, and cinnamon. The furniture had changed, but the gas fireplace still made the same small clicking sound. Evelyn was at the front desk. She saw us. For a moment, nobody knew what kind of reunion this was supposed to be. Then she walked around the desk and shook Lewis's hand. She looked at mine before choosing the right one. "Daniel, Evelyn." Marin came down from the mezzanine a few minutes later. She had grown her hair longer. Her radio was still clipped high on her shoulder. We sat in the bar and talked for an hour. Not about everything. Enough. Calvin had received 12 years. Martin received 9 after cooperating with federal investigators. Owen received 18 months. The medical logistics company changed its security procedures and fired 3 executives whose access controls had made the data theft possible. Howard's lawsuit settled privately. The Halcyon no longer used 4-digit employee codes without physical badges and biometric confirmation. On paper, every failure had been corrected. Before we left, I walked to the valet stand. A row of key fobs hung inside a glass cabinet behind the desk. Each one had a printed barcode and a digital tag. No paper tickets. The valet on duty asked if I needed my car. "No," I said, "just looking." He gave me the polite smile employees use for former employees they do not recognize. Outside, a gray Audi pulled beneath the awning. Newer model, Wisconsin plates. A woman in a red coat got out and handed the key to the valet. Her husband climbed from the passenger side and went to the trunk for their luggage. Ordinary. The valet printed a receipt and drove away. Lewis joined me near the revolving door. "You good?" "Yeah." The Audi's taillights disappeared toward Mason Street. For no reason I could explain, I looked through the rear window as it turned. Something green swung from the mirror. A pine tree air freshener. I watched until the car vanished behind the corner. Then I checked the woman in the red coat. She was still standing beneath the awning. Her husband, too. Both waiting for the revolving door to clear. Nothing wrong. Nothing changed. Still, I wrote down the plate number on the back of a receipt and kept it in my wallet for 6 months. And that's the end of today's chilling tale. If you enjoyed this story and want more nights full of suspense, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on the bell so you never miss a scare. I've got plenty more stories waiting for you, so stick around and check out the other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe and don't look behind you.